Township Planning Board meeting Thursday, August 4th, 2022. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 7th, 2022, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 7th, 2022, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 7th, 2022, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Members of the public will have a chance to ask questions and comment on applications once the chairman opens the hearing up to members of the public. If you wish to ask questions or comment on an application, you will need to use the raise your hand feature and we will bring you into the meeting one at a time. You will need to have audio and video capability. You will be sworn in and you'll be required to provide your name and address. For anyone calling in, you can press *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to mute or unmute yourself. This meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to check the audience one more time, make sure there's anybody else hanging out there?
Please.
Oh, Mr. Boy, nice to meet you. And Mr. Greenfield in the audience at all?
Mr. Greenfield's excused tonight.
Oh, okay. Okay. And Mr. Seaman as well?
I haven't heard from Mr. Seaman and I don't see him on here.
Okay. Let's start roll call, please.
All right, Mr. Bavai,
Here.
Mr. Cristiano,
Here.
Mr. Dorado,
Here.
Mr. Greenfield's been excused, Mr. Husser,
Here.
Mr. Nicastro,
Here.
Mr. Seaman, I have not heard from. Councilman Bonovich, I have not heard from. Mr. Spanville,
Here.
Ms. Talente. I thought she was on. Megan, you don't have
Audio?
audio.
Give us a thumbs up if you hear us.
Okay,
She's here. She'll work on her audio.
thank you. And Chairman Tannenhouse.
Here.
Motion, you have a quorum, and just to let you know that John Hess is in the audience or on the video for Laura Newman this evening as the board engineer.
Thank you. Mr. Hess, at some point, we're going to need your video, please.
I thought it was on.
No, hold on, John, if I maybe. No, we have no video for you.
I don't have any, I don't show any control bar where I can, where I can set that.
Lower left-hand corner of the screen should be a stop video, start video. You gotta just when you first log in, it logs in as the video.
Sometimes you have to move your cursor down there. It doesn't show it automatically.
I've got it down there. All I have is a mute bar, a mute button, and that's it.
You were on earlier.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with it.
Go log out and log back in.
Okay, I'll be right back.
We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll hopefully you get your audio back, your video back. Okay, could everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops, both serving here and abroad, and all of our first responders. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. We have any approval of minutes?
We have no minutes this evening.
Vouchers?
No vouchers.
Correspondence?
Correspondence, I do. I have a letter from Adam Fiella, the attorney for Monmouth Commerce Center. They were originally rescheduled to tonight, and he sent a letter asking for an adjournment from this evening and to go on to the September 1st hearing due to the unavailability of their consultants for this evening. He's going to notice for the September 1st hearing, and he granted an extension of time to the board through September 2nd, 2022. And that was rescheduled, so I did not even put them on the agenda, but in case any member of the public is on. The other thing is just to make sure that everybody did do their passwords over. And if you haven't, please make sure you do so as soon as possible. Again, it has to be 10 characters, uppercase, lowercase, a digit, and a special character. If you have any questions, you can always contact me and I'll help you out. And
We
that's
see
all
you
I-
now, John.
Thanks. That worked.
Ron, did you make any announcement for Monmouth Commerce?
No, they're going to be renoticing, so no announcements required.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Any other further correspondence?
No other correspondence.
Resolution. First
We-
resolution is case number SP-1099. Eligible voters are Mr. Dorado, Mr. Husser, Mr. Nacastro, Ms. Talente, and myself.
I'll make
Do I
a
have a
motion to memorialize.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second,
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dorado,
yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Mr. DeCastro,
Yes.
Ms. Talente. We still don't have audio for you, Megan. You might have to sign in and out again.
Yeah, why don't we try that?
And Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. I see there's no submission waivers on our agenda. Is that correct?
I have no submission waivers this evening.
Applications before the board.
Mr. Chairman, just before we get to that, it looks like Ms. Talente did, I think, sign out, and she's going to try and sign back in. So why don't we give her a moment? Because if she misses the beginning of the hearing, then she's not eligible.
Okay, why don't we get the attorneys and the professionals for the next applicant?
And Eileen, Rob's in the wings here.
I did notice that and I just brought him in. I think he recused himself the last time from this first application though, so. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to bring Rob in, but I can't get him. Mr. Wolfson, while we're waiting for one more member, who else do you need brought into the hearing?
Yes, thank you, Eileen. So there should be something identified as Steve, and on that entry are 3 Steves, all of the applicants, Steve Santola, Steve Varnakis, and Steve Nichols.
All right, I only have 1 Steve. so
Yeah, all 3 of them are together.
Okay, perfect.
Yep, and then I see Dennis is on, Dennis
Yes.
Keenan, Thomas Carmen,
Okay. And I'm not seeing Megan.
should I give you more?
Oh, do you have anybody else? Go ahead.
Yes, I do, I'm sorry, Mark Kaburski,
Okay. Go ahead.
Andrew Ferranda,
All right.
and John McDonough.
I have John Ray. I don't have John McDonough.
John McDonough, if that's you, can you text me?
John Ray would be, he's with McDonough and Ray. That would be him.
Thank you, John.
Welcome.
Do we have anybody named Reuven that needs to come in?
No.
And I'm not getting Megan, so
Do you have Tom Carmen?
I do now.
And I'm not seeing that Ray, which would be John McDonough.
I'm trying to bring him in, but he may
Got
not be right at his computer. I don't know.
Well, he's our last witness, so.
Okay.
You ready to go?
Yeah, I can't find Megan on. Oh, wait, I got her now. Hold on. Unmute Megan so we can hear you.
I'm back. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
perfect. Now we can hear you.
No worries. Thank you. Counselor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, board professionals. Peter Wolfson of Dave Pitney here again on behalf of the applicant Woodmont Senior Living LLC. We're seeking preliminary and final major site plan and bulk variance approval to construct a 130-unit luxury senior living community with independent living apartments, assisted living units, and memory care units. The property is shown as lots 44, 45, and 52 on block 130 of your tax map. And if approved, the applicant would consolidate those lots into one. We previously appeared before you at your June 16 meeting. At that meeting, we presented the testimony of Stephen Nichols of Woodmont, who discussed the benefits of the project and operational information about the senior living development. Dennis Keenan of French and Perollo Associates, the project engineer, provided an overview of the property and orientation to the surrounding area and led us through the proposed development. Tom Carmen also testified of Melillo and Bauer. He's our landscape architect, and he discussed the proposed landscaping and lighting for the project. And finally, Mark Kuberski of Mayer, the project architect, discussed the proposed architecture and floor plans. In response to the board professional review letters and comments received from the board members at the June meeting, the applicant submitted a response letter with an itemized response to the review letters and detailed listing of the changes made to some of the plans. And that was by our letter of July 22, 2022. With that letter, we submitted at the request of the board copies of our phase 1 environmental report dated March 2021, our phase 2 report of April 20, 2021, a revised sheet 4 of 16 of the preliminary and final major site plan with a revision date of July 19, 22, a revised overall landscape plan rendering also dated 7/19/22, a green materials list in response to a question from a board member, a copy of the Freehold Soil Conservation District certification letter dated June 24, 2022, and a revised architectural floor plan and elevation dated July 19, 22. Additionally, prior to the meeting, in accordance with law, we submitted a landscape rendering and a copy of an email correspondence from Patrolman Kyle Bush confirming sign off on traffic safety. That was his email of 7/7/22. Not only do the revised plans address the comments we received, they also result in the elimination of some previously requested variances and waivers, which will be discussed further in testimony tonight. Also, since the June hearing, Steve Nickel of Woodmont walked the neighborhood to discuss the application with neighbors. With me this evening are the project engineer, Dennis Keenan, who you've heard from already, who will discuss the revised plans that were submitted to the board. You'll then hear from the project traffic engineer, Andrew Fernando, who will discuss the minimal traffic impacts and circulation on the site. The board has not heard from Andrew yet. And finally, the project planner, John McDonough, will provide testimony regarding the justification for the relief sought. All other witnesses who testified at the last hearing are also here this evening and will be available for questioning by the public as was contemplated at the June meeting. I want to just, by way of housekeeping, acknowledge receipt of the following additional review letters since the June meeting. There's a traffic safety email correspondence dated July 7, 2022, which is shown on Eileen's sheet as B18. That's from Patrolman Cherney. That's the same day as the email we had gotten from his colleague, but that's confirming directly to the board, sign off on traffic issues with one issue raised that our traffic expert will address. Want to acknowledge receipt of the Farmers Advisory Board review letter dated July 22, 2022 with no comments. That's B19. The board planner review dated July 29, 2022, which is shown as B20 on Eileen's sheet. And finally, board engineer review number 2 dated August 1, 2022, which is shown as B21 on the sheet. As of the hearing, we had been up to 820 on exhibits. Eileen has updated that with some of the things we've submitted. I refer to the phase 1 and phase 2 reports. They are marked as 821 and 22. I refer to the revised sheet 4 of 16 of the preliminary and final major site plan. That's marked as A23. And I refer to the overall landscape plan rendering, which is shown as A24. In addition, I'd like to ask that the following couple of things that were submitted also be listed as exhibits. The green materials list, I would request be listed as A25. The revised architectural floor plans I refer to as A26. The landscape plan rendering as A27. And then the email correspondence from Patrolman Kyle Bush regarding traffic safety as A28.
So Eileen, those were exhibits that we had not pre-marked?
No, but they were part of the document distribution that was submitted. And
Okay.
some of them, like A5 and A6, were updated with the last revised date of 7/19. That's why they weren't relisted.
Okay. All right. So we can mark those.
Thank you for your indulgence with that housekeeping. At this point, we're ready to get to the matter. I'd like to recall Dennis Keenan, who will lead us through the changes in the plans that we submitted since the June meeting. Dennis?
Is Mr. Keenan on camera?
Yeah.
I am.
Okay, I just remind you that you remain under oath. And for purposes of the record, if you could just state and spell your name again.
Sure. It is Dennis Keenan, D-E-N-I-S, Keenan, K-E-E-N-A-N.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Keenan.
What I'd like to do is just really walk the board through the resubmission of the site plan sheet that we had resubmitted here. And if I can, I will share my screen. All right, you can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after the last planning board meeting, we did hear the concerns of the board, specifically related to the 50-foot buffer along West Farm Road. In the same way, we provided a 50-foot buffer along the residential properties. We're looking to have an additional 50-foot buffer added along West Farms Road. So we took a look at the site plan and looked at how we could incorporate that into the design. And through that process, we put together the attached plan, which addresses the buffer and maintaining the existing buffer, as well as some of the other comments. What I'll do is I'll walk through those individual comments, and specifically starting off with the buffer. And what I have shown here is you'll see what is kind of this hatched area, which is an extension of the buffer we had seen on the prior submission, but continuing up along West Farms Road. It's a 50-foot buffer offset from the property line. It is this dashed line kind of carrying along right through there. And what we did is we shifted the road internal to the site down the sheet a little bit. We shifted the building a little bit to open up a little bit more space, shifted the loop road around, and shifted the parking down to open up some room between that buffer line and our curb line. And we allowed 7.5 feet between the curb line and the buffer, such that we can maintain what is shown in this hatched area as undisturbed land, and we would not need to grade in that area. And we're allowing the 7.5 feet between the curb to the buffer. That's basically 2.5 feet from the curb line to the face of wall, and then allowing 5 feet from the face of wall back to the limit of excavation. And we added to this plan this dashed line that wraps around the back of the wall, and you'll see we added on all the walls. You can see it's right on the buffer line, and then it extends around to the back of the walls. And then when the walls kind of flop the other way, you'll see this dashed line extending in the other direction, in this case towards the building, where the buffer is actually lower than the development. So that was added to the plans. We also updated the wall type we're going to propose. So what we're proposing now is a ready rock retaining wall system, which is a larger block wall. It's not the typical keystone block walls that you're used to seeing. And the advantage of that is there's not a geogrid system, which is going to require an extensive excavation behind the wall. So this ready rock wall system allows us to basically build a wall from the face of wall back 5 feet, and it'll allow us to go up at least 9.5 feet high. And what we did is we prepared engineering calculations to support the fact that we can construct that wall system 9.5 feet with only requiring 5 feet of excavation. That was included in this updated submission package, showing that this system will work. So another item we included in this submission was an update of the parking calculations. We were a couple parking stalls short on the last submission. So we relooked at the parking, added a couple parking stalls. We have a total of 132 parking stalls provided on the property. We have the electric vehicle charging stations that provide us a parking stall credit. So that provides us a total parking count, or equivalent of 145 parking stalls, which is what's required for this development based on the standards identified by your engineer. Additionally, we added sidewalk, which was requested. We added sidewalk along West Farms Road. We added sidewalk along Route 9, and then we extended the sidewalk into the site and tied into the loop system that's around the proposed building. We did also add a curb line along West Farms Road, which was requested by your engineer. We included some other just dimensional things, like identifying more of the parking stall sizes at individual locations throughout the property. We updated the striping at the loading area as requested. We provided a notation at the pump station that this would be an 8-foot high chain link fence around the pump station. And we also addressed the comments of the fire official, which required some striping along the curb lines, some indication of no parking fire lane signs, or no parking fire lane paint on pavement, some signs that indicate the same, and extended them throughout the property as requested. We provided access ramps into the detention basins, and we provided an AASHTO site triangle. In addition to the site triangle that was previously shown by the ordinance, we included the AASHTO site triangle as requested. So those are just some of the items that we've updated in this plan to address the comments of the board and your professionals. The other item that was discussed at the prior meeting was what would occur with this future commercial pad site. And there was essentially a request to maintain that existing condition within that pad site, leave it wooded, essentially, disturbed. If that development had not been identified yet. And we did look at the grading and determined that that was something we could accommodate. So we agreed to leave that area of the future commercial pad site as undisturbed until such time as there's another application before the board, it's approved, and development is identified for that site. Additionally, we also updated some landscaping plans to comply with your board's certified tree expert. So we have the updated review letter from your engineer, and I just kind of want to go through that quickly to go over the waivers and variances that were identified in there and really how that's affected by this new plan that we've issued. And I'll start off with the first one. It's a variance request from section 256-5A4. And this was with respect to the signs on each edge of the property along West Farms Road and Route 9. We had talked about this previously with the sign along Route 9, where we're proposing it set back 10 feet. We're maintaining that. We're maintaining that variance request. There was an issue raised in this latest review letter based on this updated design that we have. Currently, the signs comply along West Farms Road, and they're set back 10 feet. The comment was raised that we have agreed to dedicate right-of-way along West Farms Road, 30 feet back from the center line of the road. So when that occurs, now those signs would be located within the roadway or the right-of-way. Obviously, I'm sure the township doesn't want the signs in the public right-of-way, so we would agree to move them out of the right-of-way. So we would, and basically that would be about 14 feet from the existing property line. We would slide them back. And what we're asking, that we would ask for variance relief from the 10-foot setback. What we're asking for is a 1-foot setback from the right-of-way line, from the proposed right-of-way line. And the reason for that is you can see the signs really, I think, as they exist on this plan are at a good location. They're set back from the road. They have some visibility for vehicles driving by. Now we're looking at moving them back another 5 feet or so. If we had to move them back 15 feet, I think they would be far enough into the site. I don't think motorists would really see them, and I don't think they would really see the sign until they are right up along in front of the road, which at that point then I think becomes a safety concern. The motorist driving by, seeing the sign very late, and then putting their brakes on very quickly. So,
Mr. Keenan, could I
Yes.
just ask my professionals a quick question about the right of ways, because I need to be educated a little bit.
sure.
Ms. Beam,
Yes,
the dedication to the right of way, is that just in case the roadway needs to be widened at some point in the future?
correct.
Okay. Do you think it would be reasonable to ask the applicant that if in fact the town ever went ahead and implemented that widening, that at that point that sign would then have to move to be in compliance with the 10 foot from the roadway? Otherwise it would end up being a foot off of a new road.
I agree. I mean, I think the likelihood that this road is going to be widened is probably slim to none. So I have I don't take exception to the relief that they're asking for now, but I think what you're asking is reasonable. And I would go back, Mr. Wolfson, in the event that the 10 feet were to be improved at some point in the future, would you be amenable to moving the sign back 10 feet at that point?
Yes, that makes sense to us.
But I take no exception to that, Mr. Chair, so.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Carry on, Mr. Keenan.
Okay, thank you. The next item is variance relief from section 256-5B3. That was the requirement for 2 signs and 3 are proposed. Ultimately, nothing's changed on that. Same variance relief we discussed at the prior meeting. Section 188-11 states that no retaining wall shall be constructed within the front yard of the setback of the property. This variance remains, and however, what I'll say is that we have reduced that because now we've taken walls. We did have some walls that were actually in the buffer area. We have pulled them back out of the buffer area. So we still are asking for relief as fashion we discussed at the prior meeting, and the same justification based on the grades and the fact that these walls are actually lower than the roadway and that would not be visible.
Mr. Keenan, if I understood your testimony, I believe that the only buffer disturbance you have is the 5 feet that you need to disturb the soil in order to put the wall in. But then once the soil is back, the wall is no longer in the buffer. Did I understand that properly?
Correct. Well, we wouldn't even disturb. The 5 feet of excavation is to the buffer line. So to construct the wall is going to be set basically 5 feet in front of the buffer. That gives us room to construct the wall, gives us room to put a fence up. So our intention is not to go into that buffer.
So where, I'm sorry, I'm just confused. Where do you still need variance relief?
This specific variance is related to a wall within the front yard setback. So the setback is at 60 feet.
Got it. I understand. Ms. Beam, do we believe that since this is so far off from the road, it causes any issues?
We take no exception to the request that's been asked for.
Great, thank you.
Now that they've moved it out of the buffer, we have no issue with what they're proposing.
Thank you.
The next variance relief is section 188-63D. That indicates that no structure or disturbance is permitted within the buffer area. And we can see based on this updated plan, that's what we did. We prepared a plan that included no disturbance within that buffer. We kept the wall outside of the buffer and the excavation outside of the buffer. However, it was raised, an issue was raised by your engineer in their letter indicating that the applicant has agreed to dedicate right-of-way along West Farms Road, and depending on how you measure the buffer, right now we're measuring the buffer 50 feet from the property line. When that right-of-way is dedicated, we would be essentially 14 feet further back, and they're indicating that they feel that is then going to require variance relief because the buffer would be moved 14 feet. And we would actually be serving within that area if it's measured from the proposed property line. So, you know, we've had other applications where we have interpreted that the measurement is taken from the existing property line, but that's an interpretation of the board.
No, I think you should request the relief because we're anticipating that the right of way is going to be dedicated. So the buffer should be measured off of the proposed property line. Mr. Chair, I don't take exception to what they're requesting. And Mr. Wilson, I just think you should just request the relief based upon what's going to be dedicated. But I mean, ultimately it's up to the board, but my professional opinion is I take no exception to what they're asking for.
Mr. Chair, I agree with the need for the relief. I take no position on merits, but the need for the relief, I think Jennifer is correct.
Yeah.
Based on that, then we will ask the board for that relief,
Okay.
especially in light of the unlikely event that this road is going to be widened.
So the next variance was from section 188-63E, and that was the section that indicated we should provide a berm or landscaping within the buffer area. And I think we discussed this last time in enough detail that it was the recommendation of your tree expert and the opinion that the project was better suited to maintain the existing vegetation and not take down the vegetation to put in a berm and provide landscaping. We are supplementing the buffer with additional landscaping, but we didn't want to take down the trees to put up a berm. I think
Agreed.
So that's the variances. I think I got them all. From a design waiver standpoint, I think we had gone through them in the prior meeting, and really all that still stands. The only, I guess there's really two items that I just wanted to touch on and discuss. And one was from section 188-226F, and that was the requirement for protective devices in front of all parking stalls, between the parking stall and the sidewalk. And I think based on the ordinance, or at least its conventional method of addressing it, and we talked about it last time, was putting a bollard at the end of the parking stall. And I voiced it last time that we are concerned about that appearance, and the aesthetic impact of bollards throughout the parking lot, parking areas in front of every parking stall throughout the site. What we're proposing, and I'm not sure whether it would meet the technical ordinance, that's an interpretation, but we would propose to put wheel stops in front of all the parking stalls
Okay,
The-
so I'm just gonna stop you right there. Will Stops is not gonna cut it. We require bollards or some kind of physical, structural integrity into the building. Will Stops is not gonna do it. So either put the bollards in, which is what we require of every single application that we see, or build it into the integrity of the wall, which is what we said the last time.
Yeah,
Will Stops is not gonna cut it. I'm sorry, no.
Okay,
but we'll give you some background on it. Mr. Keenan. We've seen too many cars over the years going through buildings.
Yes,
Mhm.
And we have this ordinance in place because of that requirement, and that's a non-negotiable.
correct.
Okay.
Like, I mean, one of my colleagues was in a building eating lunch when a car came flying through the wall, and there were Will Stops in the parking lot. So it's not something that we're interested in negotiating.
Yeah,
So
it's a safety
Okay.
issue.
yes.
So
I hear you loud and clear. We will,
Yep, we're happy to put
we'll
in,
comply.
we're happy to put in the bollards or provide a design that is satisfactory to the board professionals.
The other waiver that I just wanted to discuss, because I indicated last time we would comply, but I just wanted to leave, an open avenue this is section 188-225H6. And this is where no stormwater shall spill over retaining walls. Our intention is to comply with that wholly throughout the site. The only thing I just wanted to indicate is I think the grading will work, but we haven't gone through the detailed grading to allow us a little flexibility in the areas where we have walls up against the buffer. I don't want to go back into the buffer and have to grade into the buffer to create a swale. I would rather, in those instances, I would rather allow some water to go over the walls. Certainly, I think we'll work, if we allow a little flexibility to work with your professionals, your engineers, to make sure we're doing it everywhere we can. We would certainly do that, but we would request a waiver just to allow that flexibility. And I think that is the extent of my testimony. I'm happy to go into there are other waivers indicated that we had talked about last time, but I think we had already addressed them. So other than that concludes my testimony.
Thank you. Does anybody from the board have any questions for this professional? Okay, seeing no one raising their hand. Go ahead, Counselor, next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call Andrew Ferranda, our traffic engineer.
Did Mr. Ferranda testify at the last hearing?
He did not.
Okay. Sir, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Andrew,
Please
can
state
you?
and spell your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. My name is
Please
Andrew.
state and spell your name for the record.
Sure. Andrew Ferranda, Feranda. I'm with Shropshire Associates Traffic Consultants, address 277 White Horse Pike, Atco, New Jersey.
Hey, Mr.
Thank you.
Wilson, if you could just qualify him.
Thank you, Mr. Cucchiaro. Andrew, could you share with us your educational professional qualifications as well as your licensure?
Sure. First of all, I'm a licensed professional engineer, licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm a graduate of Drexel University with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. I'm also a PTOE, Professional Traffic Operations Engineer, higher certification in the traffic engineering field. I've testified before over 150 boards throughout the state. I review traffic for Freehold Township and I review traffic for Cranberry Township. And I'm also past president of the New Jersey section of the American Society of Civil Engineers.
Thank you. We'll accept your credentials.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew, you helped prepare a report that was submitted with the application. Can you provide testimony laying out your conclusions?
Sure. We provided a traffic report dated January 28th, 2022. In that traffic report, we go through traffic analysis as traffic engineers do. We look at peak hours. We did analysis of the site traffic. The site being a low trip generator, it's independent living as well as assisted living. For this site, we took some historic data for West Farms Road, and for Route 9. We use DOT prescribed growth rates to bring that historic data to the current and present year. We check that historic data against other data we have in the area from the DOT and also from your circulation element. We've looked at your circulation element, the data that we used from the roadways was then combined with site traffic. And I will go briefly through the site traffic for, again, what is a low trip generator. This site will generate, and we talk about peak hours in the traffic engineering field. We look at the commuter peaks, the morning commuter peak and the afternoon commuter peak. The AM is the morning, would generate 25 trips for the 130 units. That's during the highest peak hour. That would be 12 trips in, 13 trips out. In the afternoon commuter peak, that would be the PM peak. There would be 32 trips, 15 trips in, 17 trips out. Typically, again, this type of use is a very low traffic generator. We then distributed that traffic to the roadway network based on the site access that we have. Site access, and if I might ask that the site plan be brought up again, Mr. Keenan, if you have access to bringing that up.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. And if you can pull back so we can see the Route 9 access as well as the West Farms access. Okay. We have access, a right in, right out access along northbound Route 9. That driveway is about 500 feet to the what I'm going to call as a triangular circulation aisle around the building. There's approximately another 400 feet on the west side, and then another 400 feet to the driveway along West Farms. The driveway along West Farms is a full movement driveway. What that means, left turns in, left turns out, right turns in, right turns out. From our traffic analysis, we distribute the traffic to Route 9 as well as the West Farms full movement driveway based on traffic patterns developed from the roadway network. Using these traffic patterns, we then analyze the intersections under the build conditions. And with the site traffic added to the roadway network, we then grade the level of service or expected delay at the driveways. And what that is a measure of the driver's ability to get into and out of the roadway gaps without significant delay, without frustration. The driveway along West Farms operates at the highest level of service A for most of the movements. There is a level of service B. What is level of service B? 10 to 15 seconds of delay. A level of service A would be 10 or less seconds of delay. So the West Farms driveway operates at the highest levels of service. And roughly we have about 5 cars in and 5 cars out at that driveway during the peak hour. At the Route 9 driveway, we have about 10 in and out at that driveway during the peak periods. Level of service being acceptable levels of service, C or D in the afternoon, D being a level of service of about a half a minute or so to get in on Route 9 in the afternoon. Anybody who travels Route 9 knows that can be traffic during peak periods. There was a concern raised by the traffic safety department, the police department, that I discussed the site access with. They noted that there could be some concern about cut-throughs through the site from Route 9 heading northbound, then into the site to West Farms. I understand that the traffic on Route 9 can back up. I don't think that this would be Could somebody do it? They possibly could. I doubt they would try and do it a second time. If they did it, travel along Route 9, they're not far from the intersection, and it's a simple right turn in. If somebody were to turn into the site, they have to go 500 feet along this driveway from Route 9. Then they have to stop at the stop bar. They make a left turn across a crosswalk, travel through a parking area about 400 feet, then make a right-hand turn around a bend, again, within parking areas, come to another stop bar, make a left turn, get to the driveway, have to come to a stop bar and cross another crosswalk. It's just not conducive to quick travel. It's circuitous in its route. So it's not necessarily a simple straight cut through, but it was mentioned by a patrolman, so I thought I'd bring that up. The other point that was brought up at the last hearing was sight distance from the main, from the access along West Farms. The patrolman, I talked to Kyle Bush, and then there was another patrolman, Matthew Cherney, who went out to the site. And Matthew Cherney said there's over 1,000 feet in each direction. We only require 500 feet of sight distance. So there's more than adequate sight distance. I spoke with Kyle Bush, and he had noted that with the sidewalk and with the improvements that we're providing along the frontage, that the lines of sight would be clear. We've provided both a sight triangle, that's an area to keep any plantings or signs out of, as well as the AASHTO design sight distance line along the road. And we're showing nothing that would interfere with the sight distance in either of those sight triangles. So we're clear with the sight triangles. In my discussion with Patrolman Kyle Bush, he also noted that there are no accidents in the vicinity of the frontage of this site that he could come up with in his records. He did note that on West Farms at Route 9, that there are accidents. That's a busy intersection, signalized intersection. Sometimes accidents do occur at that intersection, but they're not necessarily associated with anywhere along our frontage or near where the site driveway would be.
Thank you. Does that conclude your testimony?
I think I've hit the points, yes.
Okay. Does anybody from the board have any questions for this professional? Okay, seeing none. Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call our planner, John McDonough. John did not testify at the prior hearing.
I'm
Okay.
over here if you can't see me.
I can see you. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Sure. Hi there, everyone. My name is John McDonough, and that is spelled MC, capital DONOUGH.
Okay, Mr. Wolfson, if you can qualify Mr. McDonough.
Thank you very much. John, can you share with us your educational professional experience, including licensures?
Sure thing. My education comes from Rutgers. I am a licensed professional planner here in the state of New Jersey. That license is current and in good standing. I testify in that capacity throughout the state every night of the week, 24/7, 365, if you will, and in courts as well. Also, AICP certified, which is our national certification. That's current and good standing. I'm a landscape architect, but that's not my role here this evening, but certainly fall back on that expertise in making my planning conclusions as well.
Great, thank you. We'll accept your credentials.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so John, you've heard that we have eliminated some of the relief that had originally been identified. We still needed a few points of relief. And so can you lead us through those points of relief and provide your planning testimony in support of those requests?
Sure thing. You have an abundance amount of evidence to form a predicate for my planning conclusion that this is a good application. Not only marries up very well with the site itself, but the surrounding land use context and your zoning controls and your master plan policies that you have implemented here. The applicant is asking for relatively minor relief. We'll go through them in terms of where we've landed here. And You have a good amount of, I'll say, technical backup for the planning conclusions that I'm about to make. We'll take that testimony, we'll pull it back into the statutory criteria for that relief, and give the board the reasons why this application does warrant approval under the land use law. And as planners, we all operate within a legal framework. So just to capsulize the application that's before the board now, 3 tax lots, block 130, lot 44, 45, 52, extremely spacious parcel over 11.5 acres, which is approximately 6 times more than your zoning. So it's an undeveloped piece of land having excellent carrying capacity here to support and accommodate the development that's before the board. We've got that frontage on Route 9. We've got the frontage as well on West Farm Road, which gives this particular site excellent accessibility and connectivity to the local road system, particularly all of those amenities that you see lining and community services that line on Route 9. So locating with frontage on key roadways here in the community offers excellent accessibility, connectivity to those many services. The proposal, as you know now, is a senior living facility, 3 stories, 130 units that's going to deliver a nice diverse mix of assisted living units, independent living units, and memory care units as well, which is certainly necessary and essential as our population is aging. This land use only becomes more and more important. Unfortunately, memory care is a need. It's not going away. And this applicant is going to deliver a very important community and public service here with the facility that is before you. We're here in the HD1 Highway Development District, which is a large-scale zone district. It is primarily aimed at producing large-scale development along Route number 9. And permitted uses here would include hospitals, healthcare facilities, medical centers, adult daycare, assisted living, and retail amenities as well. So the land use before you is a perfect fit for what the zone plan wants and what the overall zone intent is. The list of conformance here is much longer than the list of relief that the applicant is seeking. And all of those higher tiers of zoning are being met by this application. The use is permitted in the zone, and all of the bulk criteria, the bulk requirements are substantially met as well. All of your lot dimensional requirements are not only met, but substantially exceeded. The building requirements, the height of the building, the coverage, the floor area, the overall unit count here are all within the thresholds of what the ordinance contemplates. And then the building positioning as well, the building setbacks all comply with your, I'll say your planning goals for adequate light, air, and open space are all met here as well. The parking supply, as you've heard, is going to fully conform to the ordinance and the RSIS requirements. So absolutely no parking relief being asked for as well. Those are all the major zoning controls, and the application squares up nicely with all of those. The relief that the applicant is asking the board to move on in conjunction with the site plan approval here, relatively lower order design related deviations. Some require C relief, some require even lesser relief in the form of a design exception. On the C side, it relates to buffers, the walls, the signs, and on the design side, the design exceptions primarily related to landscaping and lighting, but I think we've landed in a good spot here where that relief is minimal and certainly does not have any substantially adverse impacts. In terms of the C relief, we always start with a consideration of the benefits of the project as a whole. That's the pull-in case. And so we consider all of the relief that the applicant is seeking. We balance them against these project betterments and these public benefits that go along with this. As we said, this is a land use that is of paramount public interest in serving and providing senior housing, which has always been and continues to remain a core purpose of the municipal land use law. That's purpose L under the land use law. The project is also going to deliver a permitted use that where a use variance would be considered an inherently beneficial use, one of those top tier uses that inherently serve the public good by their very nature. Project will promote positive aesthetics. You've seen the pictures, you've seen the visuals. It's absolutely beautiful architecture here, great care and consideration and context sensitivity to the surrounding landscape. And then, of course, that abundant landscape plan that is going to blend this built environment into the natural environment and the landscape that's around it. We're going to promote core purposes of zoning here, including efficient land use, taking underutilized prime land, prime space, and a visually prominent location into productive use. That goes towards the planning purpose for efficient use of land. The project is going to advance the planning goal for a variety of uses according to the needs of all New Jersey citizens. And again, we've got that nice mix here of senior living facilities that provides housing options. All of the above tie back to the land use law and those fundamental purposes at the preamble to the statute, especially purpose A, purpose G, purpose I, purpose L, and purpose M. Counterbalancing that, we look at the potential impacts. None of the C relief, based on all the testimony that you've heard, will trigger any adverse impact, certainly an impact of, not an impact of a substantially adverse nature. We've heard about the buffer disturbance. The overall width is going to comply. You have buffer composition that's been endorsed by the board's licensed tree expert. Our professionals have worked diligently with your professionals to work out that composition that will protect the public realm, protect those adjacent residential dwellings as well, with a nice green soft edge around the perimeter of this particular piece of property. That disturbance is necessary for drainage, for utilities, for, I'd say, essential elements of this plan, and certainly necessary to effectuate a beneficial plan and related accessory structures such as signs. The disturbance is going to be mitigated by many new plantings throughout, will not only preserve, but enhance the buffer that is required to be there by the ordinance. Walls and fences are going to be located in the setback and have some excessive height associated with them. Again, you have testimony on the record that the relief along Route 9 relates to the detention basin, which is sunken relative to the landscape. These are not walls that are rising out of the ground, but sunk below the ground. And over by West Farm Road pertains to a very small portion of the wall system that is going to be softened with landscaping as well. And then finally, the last C relief relates to the sign package. The fact that the sign package is going to be located less than 20 feet from the right-of-way. There is relief being requested relative to the sign size. You saw the visuals, and I think there's certainly a rationale under the better zoning alternative provision of the ordinance, where this is clearly going to provide a sign that is tasteful, is aesthetic. It's going to be a promotion of brand familiarity. It is not going to be obtrusive and certainly fit well within the landscape, and I believe a better alternative than a fully conforming sign. The number of signs, we've got 3 versus 2 being the maximum allowed. That's to allow those 2 signs to flank the entry off of West Farm Road, again, being tasteful and not obtrusive in the context of the overall landscape. That tackles the C relief, again, tying it all back to the fact that the substantial weight on the positive side and very little weight, even in aggregate, with the relief that the applicant is seeking. As for the design exceptions, we now move away from section 70. We move
Don, I don't think you need to go back through the waivers. I think the engineer covered it. I don't know that the board needs you to go through that. I think the variance testimony is, I mean, Mr. Chair, unless you feel that he needs to go back through the waivers that we already went through with the engineer, I don't know. I don't necessarily know that that's necessary.
No, I think if you've talked about your C variances and other variance criteria as it relates to the New Jersey statutes and the municipal land use laws requirements, I'm satisfied.
I would agree. I think you've been very thorough on the variance testimony, but I think the waivers were handled by the engineer, and unless Mr. Wolfson wants you to go through them one by one, I personally feel like they have been addressed by the engineer. And unless the board wants to hear additional testimony, I think that we've heard it.
Okay, well, let's ask the board. Does anybody else on the board want to hear any additional testimony on the waivers we've already heard from the civil engineer? Okay, seeing none?
Nope.
Mr. McDonough, you got your answer.
I get the message. I know when to stop, Mr. Chair. I'll yield to Mr. Wolfson. I think the statutory criteria met for 70 and for 51 based on all the testimony on the record, and this application certainly warrants approval.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, does that conclude your professional
That
testimony?
concludes our direct testimony, Mr. Chairman. As you'll recall, these witnesses are going to be available to the public for questions as well. The board had questioned
Okay,
witnesses in June.
I'll turn it over to our professionals. Do any of our professionals have any comments on this application or any other additional concerns that were not addressed and brought up by the applicant's professionals?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
And I also do not, I'll just note that there are some detail items that in our last review letter that still need to be addressed, and I assume that the applicant agrees to address them with our office.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Same for me. They did revise the plans to, for the most part, correct all the comments I had. There's a couple minor ones that I already spoke to the landscape architect, and he's going to just fix the few I had. I did ask for an additional evergreen trees to be added to the landscape schedule. Just because, you know, when you're saving trees and trying to plan for where the new landscaping is going, it can be difficult. So just to give us extra trees to fill in any gaps that we might find, you know, after they've done their clearing. So they were amenable to that.
Okay, fair enough. Does anybody from the board have any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll open it to the public. Eileen?
Okay, at this time, the chairman has opened the hearing up to the public. We'll use the raise your hand feature. I'll bring you into the meeting one at a time. You will need to have audio and video. You will be sworn in and required to give your name and address. If you're calling in, use *9 to raise or lower your hand, *6 to mute or unmute yourself. And the first person we have is Anatoly Jaroslavsky, and I hope I said that correctly, sir.
Okay, is he, sir, do you have the ability to turn your camera on? And we also need you to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
but
we can
can't
hear you
see
now. Are you able to turn your camera on?
Yes, it's on. I don't know.
Why it's not. 1 minute, let me just see here.
We see an image. It just says A.
Okay, let's try to get that on.
You unmute them, Eileen? You're right.
I can't unmute them. Oh, there you go.
The plans show that
Hold
there
on.
are 3 underground
Hold on,
retention
sir,
basins.
sir. Hold on. Mr. Wolfson, so a member of the public is having some problems with the visual. Are there any objections to him proceeding by way of audio?
No, no objection.
Okay, so I just need to swear you in first, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and if you could just state and spell your name and give us your address.
Anatoly, Anatoli, Jaroslawski, Jaroslawsky. My address is 6 Fox Hill Drive.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, first question has to do with the stormwater runoff. The plans show that there are going to be 3 underground retention basins. this is concerning because our neighborhood is fed by well water. What impact will these underground retention basins have with our supply of well water?
So I think that's directed towards me. So part of our calculations and what we have to do is meet a lot of the requirements for stormwater management with respect to amount of water coming off this site, but we also have to look at the amount of water going into the ground. So one of those requirements is to make sure that we provide calculations that demonstrate that we are basically matching whatever water is going into the ground today will be going into the ground tomorrow after this development. Because we are putting impervious coverage, we're going to be restricting the flow of water in the ground. So we provide these detention basins to detain some of the clean roof runoff and allow it to seep back into the ground to make sure that we are maintaining the same water table in the area.
Is it fair to say, to summarize for the public, that your system actually helps recharge the groundwater?
Correct. That's exactly what it's doing.
Thank you.
What are going to be the height and quality of the lights that will be used in the parking spaces in the complex?
All right, let me get the right plan here. Make sure I give you the right heights.
Flip what around?
The camera.
Okay, so the light poles are all 12-foot tall.
And what kind of shading is part of the light so that they're not directing the light into
okay.
bedrooms?
So what I'll do here is I'll share my screen again here. So if you can see this is the lighting plan that we submitted as part of the package. This shows the light fixture. That's a 12-foot tall light fixture. And you can see this is a nice decorative light fixture. And you might look at that and think, okay, there's going to be a light element here that's going to project out. But
Correct.
these are the new style LED light fixtures. So they actually provide a light up in the top, so it projects downward. And it really it's a cutoff light fixture, so the light is actually up above and projecting downward rather than projecting out. So that'll significantly improve the amount of light spread. So that's why when we look at this lighting plan, we see there's 0-foot candles along your property line.
There's been a number of traffic study comments. How do these projections change when the Wendy's opens up right next door?
That'll have to defer to our traffic expert.
Yes, I believe you're talking about the Wendy's on Route 9.
No, the Wendy's on West Farms Road. That's going to be adjacent to the project.
Adjacent on West Farms towards the Route 9.
That's my understanding, is that there is a Wendy's has been approved next to the gas station, in between the gas station and the entrance to your project. Is that not correct?
I'm
Not to
not
my
sure
knowledge,
if it's been
no,
approved
there's
by
no
the board.
approval as far as I know.
No,
Say
I
that.
think
Sorry, Ms. Beam.
I think Ms. Beam, I think there wasn't there an application, but I think it's between this entrance and the White Castle.
Yes,
It's further down Route 9.
That's
correct.
on Route 9, correct?
It's further
Yes.
south.
Okay, that's not what I was informed, but if you're telling me it's on Route 9 and
It
not
is
on
on
West
Route 9.
Farms
It's
Road,
not on West Farms Road, correct.
it's not on West Farms Road,
No,
okay?
Yes, that old house that kind of is, I think the only thing left is the foundation, which is just south of this entrance.
correct.
Okay, there's also been reports on the wildlife, the effect of wildlife that this is going to interfere with. I'm sure everyone is aware of the constant flow of white-tailed deer and red-tailed foxes, which were not shown on your study. They exist. We have pictures in my backyard. what are you going to do about the flow of deer that have been traveling across West Farms Road from the area, the wooded area, directly across into what will no longer be a wooded area? The deer are gonna still be there. And what about the fact that your studies, which reported all different wildlife, did not mention red-tailed foxes?
Okay, well, if I could just touch on, I mean, we are not going to interrupt, we're not going to preclude the deer from coming onto the property or the foxes to come on the property. There is a large wooded area up off of West Farms Road, you know, and they have the ability to freely roam as they do throughout the neighborhood along Route 9, so it won't be interrupted or stopped.
Of course, they're gonna be interrupted and stopped. You're gonna have cars, you're gonna have walls, you're gonna have buildings. How is that not going to interfere with the flow?
I'm saying
Where are
that we're
how
not
are
going to
the
have
deer gonna go?
barriers to keep them out. I mean, they will have the ability to still travel through the properties the same way they have the ability to travel through the property, the neighboring.
They'll be traveling through your driveways then. And your
Correct.
parking
In the-
lots.
In the same fashion they travel through the neighboring driveways.
That's, you haven't given me an answer.
I'm not sure what answer you're looking for.
What it tells me is you haven't taken it into consideration. That's what it tells me.
I think we prepared a report that acknowledged the species that were identified within the area. And, you know, this is an isolated property. There's much larger properties next door. And this is within a fully developed portion of the township where there's a lot of development along Route 9. And I think it's in the character of the area of what we're developing. And I think, you know, we're providing the same obstruction that any other property is. It's along the Route 9 corridor.
You know, let's
Well,
see what other.
except that your property, the property now is wooded and you're going to convert it into a 3-story concrete building, as attractive as it may be. It's still a 3-story concrete building in a place where there used to be trees. And why didn't your study, and I think I know the answer, because the study that was done back in 2010 or 2012, and there was no mention of the red-tailed foxes. What impact, if any, does that have on anybody's decision? The fact that you have red-tailed foxes right there. Does it matter to anybody?
Mr. Anatelli, could we move on?
I mean,
to
Mr.
another-
Anatelli,
Let's move on to another question and let's circle back to this one. What else do you have on your
I
list?
have nothing else at this point.
Okay. All right, Mr. Wolfson, do you have
Yeah, I would just note any development, it causes some impact, but we are developing this site, as you heard, almost entirely pursuant to the requirements of your ordinance. And as a property owner or a potential property owner, we have a right to do that. So we're not insensitive to any impacts that may occur as a result of it. But I would note that currently there is a movie theater complex approved for this site. And we're quite confident that the impacts that will be caused by our use are going to be significantly less than would occur were that to be developed.
Who said there's a movie theater?
I was unaware that the movie theater had been approved. It's been approved?
Yes, it was approved.
Doesn't matter. I have nothing else to say. I've said everything I need to say.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Okay, next witness, please.
Next, we have Nancy Oros.
Okay, is she on the screen? Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Orris, can you unmute yourself and turn your camera on?
I'm unmuted. My camera should be on.
It's not.
It is not.
We have no
Mr.
objection.
Wilson, say-
Yeah, no objection.
Okay. Ms. Orris, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record and give us your address.
Nancy Oris, Oris. My address is 12 Fox Hill Drive.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, my first question, when you made the revisions that were stated at the beginning of the meeting, my concern, because I'm all the way at the end of the street, the residential street, it almost looked like the buffer was shortened down towards my end to 45 feet, but the picture on the that was flipped up went by rather quickly. So that was my first question.
Let me bring back up the image here. So is this your property here?
No, I'm down at the bottom of the hill.
You're down here.
Down, yes, all the way at the end. That is correct.
Okay. So, no, okay, I see what you're saying. So this is the rear yard setback for the building. So we're representing that line on there, indicating the building is not within the rear yard because we're permitted to put a building up to 45 feet from the rear yard. However, the buffer line is this line that's further out, 5 feet further out. That's the 50-foot buffer. So there is a consistent 50-foot buffer.
Okay, and if you would just leave that up for one moment. So there was in the first June meeting, the first meeting that I listened to, there was a comment that the parking, the 50-foot buffer would be adequate because there was no parking facing into the residential neighborhood, and there is parking that will be facing into my property, and I would like to be assured that because it almost looks like on the landscape that a lot of the landscape drops off as you get down towards the bottom.
Mm-hmm. That it drops off down here.
Yes.
So I mean, I'm certain we would be agreeable to add additional landscaping here to ensure it's year-round screening against all those parking.
Okay, and then this is just a question for the engineering professionals. We talked about the displacement with the wall and the regrading that might occur, and if I understood correctly, that's not going to happen because you've made some changes to the plan. But if you start from the eastern portion of the property, there's a hill on West Farms and there's the hill that Fox Hill Drive comes up as the highest point. So I'm at the bottom of that hill. So my obvious concern is how much water is going to run down towards my property and what will be done to contain it, make sure it makes it to the basin and not my backyard.
Okay, well, I think I can. Well, I'll explain to what's going on with the grading and the drainage in this area, specifically along your buffer. So all of the stormwater that comes off the building, off of these roads, are all captured within the inlet system. They're taken, the roof runoff is taken to these underground detention basins. The surface runoff from the roads are taken to this water quality basin down here. And then they discharge into the water quantity basin over here and then end up down at this end of the site in what's a low-lying area, and I believe lower than your property. So all this runoff is captured, it's curbed, and it is directed away from your property.
Okay, that was just my concern there, because as
Absolutely.
Mr. Anatoli had stated, all of our wells are in the back of our properties. So they are right near where all this is going on. And obviously there's concern when the soil is disrupted. We all have our wells and they're all on the back of our properties. So that is a concern for us.
Understood.
I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ms. Orson. Any other
Yes, I have
members from the public?
Lake Green.
Mr. Green?
Yep, my name is Lake Green, L-A-I-K-G.
I just need to swear you in first. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board's the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Green.
My name is
Give us your name and your address.
Lake Green, L-A-I-K-G-R-E-E-N. My address is 8 Fox Hill Drive. I don't have much to say. I'll just make it brief. Pretty much everybody here who spoke tonight claims there's no adverse effects from this development. tell you right now, the quality of life, not only for the people who live on West Farms Road, but also people who live in this development here, specifically us who are right on the border of this proposed site, will be diminished greatly for subsequent generations. Not only that, I don't even see a justifiable need for a site like this when you have Brandywine Assisted Living just 5 minutes down the road, less than a mile of, not only a mile, that's already there. And as far as I'm concerned, isn't even at full capacity. I just say to the people on the board of the town, your public servants, please act in the interest of your community. That's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Green. Okay, anyone else from the public?
Yes, I have Barbara Howarth.
Okay, just let me know. Okay, Ms. Howard, Ms. Howarth.
It's
Are you
actually Matthew Howard.
Okay, sir, are you able to turn the camera on?
Yes, I'll try again. I thought it was connected.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
It's Matthew Howarth, Howarth. I'm at 10 Fox Hill Drive.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
My concerns are with the buffer. My main concerns are with the buffer behind my house, which is proposed 50 feet of existing woods. However, that's not a 4-season buffer. So my question has to do with the application for variance relief for the buffer for the 2 out of 4 items that were listed in the letter that we received. Is that still a request of the board for variance relief? Because it calls for a 10-foot high fence and a berm of at least 6 feet. The other 2 items in that number 6 in the letter we received obviously wouldn't be met. So it would only need to be the first 2. So if I can get more clarification on the buffer, that
Yeah,
would be.
I would just note that our professionals met with the board's professionals and on site, at least on one occasion, and that mutual determination was made that the best screening and buffer is achieved by not clear cutting out the area and erecting a berm because there's significant dense vegetation, all of which is going to be supplemented by extensive landscaping, which was increased through the process. So the buffer is significant and will be significant.
I don't accept that though. So I'd like to go on record saying that I would like to see at least 2 of these items met, whether it's the 10-foot fence or actually would be both of those. Is there any fence back there currently proposed? Or is it just the woods? Because when those leaves drop, you can see right through those trees. And even if there's a small little stretch of pines or whatever you decide to plant, it's not going to be sufficient. It's not going to be sufficient buffer at all.
So Shari, can I just ask you, is there a way to achieve what he's asking without like taking down mature vegetation?
Or confirm what the applicant is actually providing?
Yes, so, you know, the trees are native trees that are worth keeping. They're not invasive or in poor condition. Obviously, you can't build a berm and save the trees at the same time. So we did, I worked with the landscape architect in trying to pick out species that we can plant, you know, as the understory, you know, with the trees in the way. A lot of evergreens don't like shade. So we did work on a plant list that could work. And I did ask for additional spruce trees to spot in where needed. You know, so there's only so much you could fill in the middle of the woods, you know, but we would certainly work, we would meet out in the field and field locate the plant material. And also the ordinance does allow, so the section you're looking at is 188-63E. 63F allows the applicant to, you know, maintain the trees instead and fill in with, you know, buffer plantings. So even though they don't fill 63E, the 63F allows them to, you know, keep the trees.
So what about the fence? Why isn't there a fence proposed then of at least 10 feet high? If I'm reading that correctly, that's one of the other requirements.
Wasn't that required with the movie theater? I believe so.
I would say that to put a fence in would require them to take out existing trees, which we're not recommending. So I would suggest, I understand your concern. I would suggest you contact Shari at CME. She can meet you out there in the field and make sure that you have the screening and the buffering that you need.
Well, okay.
Well,
I
just before we move on from that, I mean, if there's going to be some sort of adjustment to it, or if some sort of post-approval, if there is an approval meeting is going to happen, I think we need to be a little bit more specific as to what that means and what the applicant is required to do.
Well, we've shown and testified in detail, and the plans are very detailed in terms of, in consultation with the board professionals, what it is we are prepared to do. That being said, we're happy to meet out in the field, but
what does that mean, though? You meet out in the field and then there's a disagreement. I mean, so I need, for purposes of like resolution compliance, I need to know, you know, if there's anything that's being agreed to other than meeting out in the field, or whether it would be resolution compliant to meet out in the field. There's a difference of opinion and nothing happens.
Respectfully, we believe that the buffer is significant already. We're supplementing it as requested with the species as requested. We really don't think there's anything else that can be done.
As requested though, Peter, by whom? By the board or by the residents that have to look through the woods in the winter and see this huge building right behind our homes, which will impact our lifestyle and also the value of our homes. So
well, I know that consideration was given as to what the species were to provide 4-season buffer. So,
Peter, do you have this behind your house?
So I'd like to just again go on the record saying I want a 10-foot wall, and I want these 2 of the 4 items addressed. I don't think it's that much to ask for. I don't think putting a wall up would impact the vegetation, the woods behind it in any way at all. And it would really help to provide a much more, I guess, a much better buffer, for lack of a better word. So I don't know if me saying this is going to actually do something here. I'd like to see maybe if we can talk about next steps, or because that's very important to me and a lot of the neighbors here in our neighborhood.
Because we're gonna have to live with this.
Oh, hold on. We can't have it. Mr. Howarth is the person. Mrs. Howarth, if you'd like to speak, you're more than welcome to come up and be sworn in.
You want
We just legally can't let you speak without us swearing you in. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
Barbara Howarth, HOWARTH, 10 Fox Hill Drive.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of know that this has probably already been approved. So what we're looking for is something that's going to help us with our lifestyle here and not have to look at this building. So it is going to lower the value of our homes. Like when we go to sell, people are going to be like, oh, really? That's what's in the backyard? Maybe not. So we're already losing that. And I'm going to go on to what Anatoly was saying about wildlife. I get turtles in my backyard. I get all kinds of things. You're tearing down their homes. And that's what's going on in Howell. And I know every year you guys have to build something. You have to meet some type of percentage of things being built, whether it's off a sunny side, and now it's here.
So we're putting up a big assisted living with one across the street, not full. My mother-in-law lives in one, not full. They have troubles employing people in that one. I just find that this area here is not a good fit. And I really don't feel that you care about the residents that are going to be behind it.
So, Mrs. Howarth, you know, just so you understand that you know you're backed up to an HD1 zone, right?
Well, we weren't.
It's an assisted
It
living.
was rezoned. This
I know,
was
but it's an
all
assisted
rezoned.
living. Hang on. And this is probably the lowest intensity that could be built there.
Really?
That's an HD1.
I disagree.
You could have
Well,
a
first,
huge.
Mr. Chairman,
We're not
I
gonna
wouldn't, these are questions for the applicant to answer, not for the board to.
Fair enough.
With the public.
Okay.
Anyway, I really just said all I have to say, and I agree with my husband. We would like to have a fence up. We need something. I thought that when they approved that theater, which was crazy, that we were supposed to have a fence and still have the 50-foot trees and still put a berm.
Does anybody know the answer to that? Has anybody studied the resolution for the theater?
Only that they had the 50-foot buffer as is required by ordinance, but not the specifics, no.
Okay. So Work, does that conclude your testimony?
Yes,
Okay, thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, I just brought someone else in. Keith Gambarski.
Hey, Mr. Gombarski, are you able to put your camera on? And we also need you to unmute yourself. Okay, then we just need you to unmute yourself now.
Unmute.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state and spell your name and give us your address.
My name is Keith Gimbarski, Gembarski. I currently live at 9 Fox Hill Drive.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I don't know if this has been brought up because this is the first meeting I'm participating in as I kind of just found out about this. My main concern is that there is a propane facility that you are sandwiching a residential or commercial. I don't know how that is going to work because you're storing, keeping people there and it's actually a business within a certain amount of feet. I don't understand how that doesn't raise any questions in regards to safety to anybody. I'm sure you're well aware of the large capacity of explosive gas that is in that area. And I thought there was about a 500-foot buffer that was supposed to be in between there in any type of residential building or even commercial. So I don't know if that was addressed, but I'm unaware of that.
Mr. Wolfson, I think that's for you and your professionals to respond. I'm assuming you guys did your research.
Dennis, do you have anything on?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any required buffer from a facility such as that.
Mr. Chairman, what I can say is that this board doesn't review like the fire subcode or the construction code or anything like that. That's not part of our zoning, and they cannot be, and no applicant can be granted relief from those requirements. So if there's something in the fire subcode, when they go to pull permits, if there's an approval, and that's one of the requirements that there is a certain buffer that's not being complied with, they're not going to get permits in order to construct. But we don't under the way that the law is written, the construction code officials are the ones that directly administer that, not this board.
Yeah, and also it doesn't, there's nothing here that prohibits, the public to giving our fire subcode officials or our fire chief a call to discuss this concern.
Well, and like I said, even if there is an approval, they can't just put a shovel in the ground. It has to go through a construction and permitting process, and that would all be vetted out.
Okay, so it's going to just be passed on along the permitting process.
Do you have any other questions?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any
okay.
other questions, please?
I just would like to reiterate the last Barbara, who was on, and Matt. Currently, at the end of Fox Hill Drive, that actually used to be a wooded area. And I've lived here for 40 years on this street. That was all wooded area, and they decided to build a flea market there. And they put a buffer, 50-foot, 2 fences, and we all know the flea market failed. I don't know if you're aware of that, because that was probably 20 years ago. Building laid vacant, and now it's multiple stores, pizzeria, food stores, White Castles, a preschool. So when we moved here, it was a quiet residential area, where we moved from a city to the country. Since that time, building that, now I listen to school children yell and scream all day. Wintertime, I get to look at that. I get to smell White Castles, pizza, Chinese food, garbage, just depending on the way the wind blows. My concern is now across the street from me, I will have another commercial building with potentially assisted living, older elders, and there's unfortunately disposal of unpleasant things. I personally don't want to be participating in smelling anything that is really unnecessary. I'd just like to know what steps would be taken, because they told us that flea market and the stores being built would not pose any threats to our way of life, and it affects us quite a bit every day.
So first of all, I would just note that this is going to be a luxury living facility. That's the first comment to make in terms of the quality of the community. The second observation is that the facility is going to be licensed and permitted by the DCA and the Board of Health. So we will meet any and all hygiene requirements and most likely exceed them based on the quality of the operation.
Absolutely. Told that about the stores that were built in the building to our south, I would imagine, or west. And yet I still smell pizza. I still smell Chinese food. I still smell White Castles, and I hear children play all day long into the evening. So, I've already been through the, we were going to stick to the highest codes. And then once you guys are out, it goes back to whatever way whoever's running it and falls apart. But my other concern is also the children, or even adults now, the 2 fences that were created are constantly kicked down, and they use it as a pathway to access. So now if there is going to be a Wendy's or any other store that is going to be adjacent to your building, who's to say that people are just going to start cutting through?
A pathway to where? I'm just gonna jump in. A pathway to
yeah, sure. Pathway to the back of the parking lot where the preschool is, and they walk to White Castles or whatever stores. So the 2 fences, one that's on our neighborhood side, and then one that's in the back of the property. Actually, one neighbor put a doorway in because he got tired of fixing the fence that the children and people were kicking down.
Is it
And,
do you know whose fence that is, Mr. Gambowski?
That's a $1 million question. I do not know. It got put up when the facility was built, so I would assume it was part of the. I'm sorry?
You talking about the flea market facility? Or is it an HOA?
Yeah, the flea market facility, I believe the fences went up when the flea market went up, yes.
Okay,
And that buffer was created and the fence on both sides, yes.
But it's not part of your neighborhood or any type of HOA of any sort. So
No, it's not part of our neighborhood, but it's right in plain sight, it's runs along everybody's
You know what?
backyard that goes across.
I would like to know how many White Castles there are in Howell.
So Rob, let me just ask Mr. Cachero a question. If there is a fence that was put up as part of an application and that fence is damaged, what would be the path? Would the citizen just go to this town zoning officer?
Yes.
Ask them to take a look at that fence, and if in fact it was a requirement of the resolution for that property, they have to maintain it.
Well, there's a couple of different paths. One is if it was a requirement of the resolution, then yes, that would go towards enforcement of the resolution. But we also have general property maintenance requirements. And you can't just have fences that are falling down and in disrepair. So even in the absence of a specific condition, there's probably a property maintenance code that could be relied upon as well.
So you should reach out to the town and ask them to look into that.
Yeah, it has been, and it just falls on deaf ears. So hence why our most southern neighbor, the last house along the proposed property, her husband would repair it, and because it just fell on deaf ears. So it was brought up numerous times, and it's never addressed.
Well, I would just say that there are people on this board that are involved in the township. So I would encourage you, if there's an issue, to continue to bring it up to the requisite departments. And
well, I was going to ask
Mr. Chair, I have
Is this even in the purview of the planning board?
I was just going to say that, Mr. Chair, I would say that what we can do, and the only thing we can do, is I'd recommend perhaps that Eileen just send a memo to the zoning officer, making her aware of making the zoning officer, whether it's a he or she, aware, and ask for an investigation. That's all that we can do.
That's correct. Thank you. I was getting to that, but you guys stole my thunder.
No, understandable, and I get it, but I think you're missing the point. Is that our quality of life now is constant dealing with something that was really unnecessary. As a matter of fact, like I said, it's at dead. And speaking upon the Escape movie theater that was proposed and planned and approved there, do you guys understand or know the condition of the Escape movie theater at its current state and moment? You realize that it's not in operation at all, and it's just a property sitting there. So you know that they cut down probably about 40 acres of trees to basically make a parking lot and a brick box. So, with all the empty stores and empty places in this, I just don't understand why we need to knock down and disturb nature to squeeze and shoehorn a facility that is not needed. And that's what I want to go on record for. I've lived here for 40 years. People have been trying to build in that little corner for many, many of years, and it's just always fallen through. And it's fallen through because it's just not practical, and it disturbs, which this neighborhood was called Howell Estates when we moved in here as a high quality living, is now turning into a rural city, small Staten Island area. And that's not what I signed up for. That's not what I paid for my house for. I paid top dollar for my house to have a quality of life. And unfortunately, I am not getting what I paid for. And now the value of my house is just going to go down because I'm going to have a 3-story building to look across to. commercial, residential. I don't know how you guys want to word it, but you're running a business there. So I'd just like to go on record that it's just not approved, and I do not want to lose the value of my home that I worked very hard for.
Do you have any other questions?
At this current moment in time, no, I do not.
Okay.
I will be in touch with the fire inspector and find out what that code is and pursue that.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
We have anybody else?
Yes, I just brought in Ann Rosano. Or I was trying to.
Is she on camera? Oh, Ms. Rosano, are you able to turn your camera on? And we also need you to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Are you able to turn your?
Unfortunately,
turn your camera on?
I can't seem to
Okay.
turn it on. I don't know why. I'm sorry.
Mr. Wolfson?
No objection.
Okay, Ms. Rosano, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
My name is Ann Rosano, Rosano. My address is 6 Fox Hill Drive.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a report in front of me from it's the Township of Howell in the Environmental Commission Plat Review number 1. This was the applicant, of course, Woodmont Senior Living. And the commission, all of you signed this, and it states at the bottom here that the Environmental Commission is concerned with filling of wetland area A in addition to construction of a driveway through the buffer of wetland area B. We're also concerned about the removal of 1 to 8 acres of trees with limited clusters of tree plantings. The environmental impact report does not include details on the site inspection, i.e. dates, length of time on site, nor does the report include qualifications of the preparer. And this is signed by the commission on March 9th, 2022. So I just feel like there is a, not, understanding that everyone seems to want to do this, yet there's conflicting here. How many trees, as many trees as possible should remain? One average tree absorbs 20 pounds of CO2 per year. Consider all the car, bus, and truck traffic on Route 9. One average tree produces 260 pounds of oxygen per year. Trees, plants, etc. are the only means of producing free oxygen. So how many trees will be removed? And why is there this contradiction of this, the applicant, the Township of Howell and what they stated?
Well, I can update that because I sit on the Environmental Commission. There's also a subsequent Environmental Commission plat review, which we reviewed it numerous times, dated May 11th, 2022, in which we requested to meet with the applicant and to provide additional environmental studies and woodlands management plans, which were provided for review. And based upon that, the initial conclusion was subsequently changed.
It doesn't change. Well,
Doesn't change the fact.
okay, and it doesn't change the fact, though. That's the problem here. So another thing I do want to mention is I frequent nursing homes and assisted living facilities. I'm an audiologist and a hearing aid dispenser. I work here in Monmouth County. Just as Barbara Howarth has mentioned, a lot of these places are not filled. This particular facility, Steve Nichols, when he came to us, I asked him a question with regards to the memory care unit where there are only 8 beds. And when I asked him, when people do get up in years that are living there and might need a memory care unit and there are only 8 beds there, well, what happens? He said, well, they'll have to go elsewhere. Well, that I cannot imagine. I mean, in kicking people out of there, I don't understand that. So I don't know if any of you can answer that, but that makes no sense to me at all.
Mr. Wolfson, do you have a response just to whether the relevance of the question or whether you want to answer it?
Steve Nichols, can you just clarify how many beds are in the memory area?
And just, Mr. Nichols, we previously swore you?
Yes.
Okay, I just remind you, you remain under oath, and just please state and spell your name for the record again.
You folks hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you need to go on camera. Okay,
There I
there
am.
you are. Okay.
How many beds are in the memory center?
There are 28 beds, not 8, 28.
Okay. And do you anticipate having a policy of kicking people out of the facility?
The policy that we're going to adhere to is the state guidelines by the Department of Health in New Jersey. So what I stated was that if someone has an acuity that we cannot maintain, that they would have to seek residence elsewhere, and we would help them find that. And if the community was full, and that if someone from assisted living needed to move into memory care, and the 28 beds that we had for memory care were full, we would not allow that person to unsafely live in assisted living. We would assist them in finding a proper residence elsewhere. What I would not allow is someone to live in assisted living who needed memory care, a memory care neighborhood. That's an unsafe living environment.
Mr. Nichols, I just have a question for you. I
Certainly.
recall from the last time we all spoke that you did say it was 8 beds. And when you were at my home, you said it was 8 beds, but now you say it's 28. Okay. My other question to you would be, as time goes on, I mean, I'd imagine this particular facility is extremely expensive monthly for people. I don't know. You've never mentioned how much it would be. I'd imagine it would be in upwards of $5,000 a month. At some point, people's funds run out. What happens if Medicaid kicks in? Do they remain there?
Mr. Chairman. So I think it's a necessary time for me to talk about what jurisdiction this board has under the municipal land use law. And it is not a choice that this board has. It's a state law adopted by the legislature, and it guides us and gives us our jurisdiction. Our role is to determine whether the proposal complies with our zoning, site plan, and design criteria ordinances. Where it does not, we have to determine whether relief should or should not be granted. We also have a role in determining the safety of ingress and egress to the site. The manner in which an applicant operates its business that does not impact on compliance with those ordinances is beyond the board's jurisdiction. So let's assume that the board were in some manner offended or disapproved of the fees associated with living at this facility. You couldn't deny an application based upon it, nor could you approve an application, because the fees were low. You couldn't deny an application because how the rooms are distributed and who can and live there and who may need to seek help elsewhere, because it doesn't impact the site plan, design, or zoning ordinances. So I don't seek to minimize the importance of many of these issues. And in fact, we've all, and myself included, have had to deal with them in our own personal lives. But what I can tell you is the law is very specific that this board can't use that as a reason to either approve or deny the application.
Thank you for the clarification. Ms. Rosano?
Well, I guess I don't believe I have any more questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any more?
Yes, hold on. I have Nancy Orris would like to come back in.
You want to go back in?
It's a done deal.
Who's speaking now?
Nancy Orris again.
I am here. In the June meeting, there was a question that came up regarding deliveries and when deliveries would happen. And I don't know if it was Mr. Wolfson or Mr. Nichols that said that they would get back to us on when deliveries, like based on what happens at their other facilities. Did I miss that piece of information?
Nope, they didn't talk about it.
No,
Steve,
you did not. That's definitely something they should address.
Steve, do you want to talk about expected deliveries based on your experience in the industry?
No, look at it. He's
Certainly.
25 years old.
Most deliveries will be through the front entrance, and that is twofold. There are twofold reasons for that. One, most of
What is,
the
and can you just clarify for the public, what is the front entrance? Is that the Route
front
1
entrance
side,
is
West
the
Farm
one
side?
facing West Farm Road,
Okay.
correct. And the reason for that is residents will be receiving mail, and they'll have their own individual mail rooms, and community deliveries, having anybody in the community will have to have them screened. So most deliveries will come through the front door. Any delivery that was going through the back door will be scheduled. While we do not have that schedule to provide because we'll be working with several different vendors, what I can say is that I'm not going to disturb you, nor do I want to disturb the residents who will be living there. So residents who will be living there will also be concerned about this. And we're going to put them on a schedule that it will be short, concise, and will not disturb anyone.
So my concern would be the loading dock in the back. So, I mean, are we talking about like a tractor trailer? Are we talking like a smaller straight job type of a truck? Like, what do you anticipate the traffic will be on the in and out on these types of deliveries?
It'll be very minimal. There probably will be a food truck. I can't describe the length of that because it's just a pie in the sky guess. But with 130 residents, I would probably assume that I would get 2 deliveries per week, and those deliveries would probably come in maybe 7 o'clock in the afternoon. But that would just be a guess.
Okay.
What I could do, and you do have my information, is try to work with you during the operation of the community to get something that works best for not just the community, but for also you guys.
Okay, so I did see your delivery, the letter that was left. I don't know if it was given to my son. I was at work, I didn't see it, and your desire to work with the community. So I'll put it directly to you, and I'll include Mr. Wolfson in this request that we are asking for a fence. It won't displace a lot of trees, as our tree expert seems to think it would disturb the natural vegetation. I think that it would be a small gesture if you want to work with the neighbors in this neighborhood, is to really give us that fence. I think that would, would be a nice gesture. It would, I mean, this is a large project, and I'm pretty sure it wouldn't cause too much damage to your budget, but it would certainly be appreciated. Like I said, you want to be a good neighbor, and you offered goodwill. I didn't speak with you directly, but I would request that you would consider that. And if we do have concerns as the seasons change, that if we are having issues with, visibility, that you would go on record saying that you will continue to work with us.
I will go on record as saying I will work with you and continue to work with you. That's why I gave you my number, and I want to be a welcomed and appreciated neighbor in the neighborhood.
In terms of the fence, Ms. Orris, I think the expert testimony is that the buffer is better served by the existing vegetation as supplemented in consultation with the board.
And I will tell you that my neighbors and I feel that, good, big fences or strong fences make good neighbors. And I think there's a lot to be said with that. Like people were trying to illustrate, we do contend with a lot of foot traffic. And I would like for the board's clarification to say that when I have a problem with the fence, and everybody who's on the call, I go over to the office at the storage place and I speak with the secretary there. They reach out to the owner. So when a part of the fence comes down, I ask them, and he has a work crew that does come out, and they do take care of the fence. I had an issue with one of the trees I felt was threatening my property line. It took him about 3-4 weeks, but he did come out with a crew, and the fence climbers came and dropped the tree. So for everybody who's on, Mr. Gambrowski, who's on, might still be on the call, that if you go over to that office, I have found that they have always worked with me when I've had issues. It is a pretty dilapidated fence, I'm not gonna lie. But that gentleman over, whoever has that easy storage over there, they have helped me and they have honored my request through the years. I've lived here for 25 years.
Thank you, Ms. Horace.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a follow-up question. Steve, I think when you just testified to the deliveries, I think you said most or nearly all deliveries would happen in the front. What is it that you would anticipate is going to happen in the rear?
Specifically food deliveries. And as I said, I'd gladly work with the neighbors to try to to accommodate a time that works for everybody. Again, I don't have specifics because I'm not in operation currently, but when I am, I will gladly work with everyone.
Well, you run other facilities though, I think you said, right?
Correct, but not here.
Well, I mean, what typically happens at those facilities though?
Just like I said, it could be a varied time depending on the food service delivery company. There are several that we work with.
Do you have the ability to, at your other facilities, to discuss preferred times with them?
I could always discuss preferred times, and that's why I'm willing to work with everybody.
Okay.
I think the bottom line is that you're gonna need to be a little bit more definitive here if you want an approval. So I get you can discuss it and blah, 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 but like, I think that you need to be more definitive when they're gonna come, and you need to be more expansive with us on what that means, period. Like, I don't see the board giving you deference to do this whenever you feel like it. So figure it out and then let us know.
Steve, is it accurate to say that you will contact anybody who will be making a delivery to the site and work with them to the extent it's appropriate, do deliveries in the front?
It's not only accurate, it's a 100% precise, again, because we have to have the building secured at all times.
Right.
So, yes.
Is it also accurate that you will you will direct them in terms of regulating hours of deliveries so as to minimize any disturbance to the neighborhood?
Yes, it is 100% correct.
And Ron, can we put it in the record that they comply with the township ordinances on the time of deliveries? We have an ordinance of this.
To the extent there's an ordinance on the books that regulates delivery times, we certainly will meet it.
Okay.
I have Mr. Jaroslawski would like to come back in. I don't know if he's coming in. I also have someone that's just in as, oh, never mind. And I have Ann Rosanna wants to come back in, and someone named Owner, who I'm going to bring in first since they haven't been in. I'm trying to bring them in and they're not coming in, so. Here's Ann Rosanna again.
Oh, and Owner's there too.
One thing I just want to say, oh, I'm sorry.
What's he saying?
Can I speak?
Yes, you may.
Ann Rosano?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know Steve is in Princess Bay, Staten Island. I grew up in Tottenville. I left Staten Island because of all the developing that was going on and moved here. I see how Manalapan and Marlborough is up on 9 and how packed and congested it is. And I hate to see that happen down here in Howell. So, you know, I'm very much opposed to this. And I just needed to just wanted to put that out.
Thank you, Ms. Rosano. Okay, whoever is got the name Owner, could you please unmute yourself? state your name and address. Can you manually unmute them, Eileen? from
I
your
just
side?
did.
For the person that is labeled owner, could you please state your name and address? Seeing none, Eileen? Next member of the public, please.
I have Mr. Jaroslawski again. And he's not, for some reason, he's not coming over. I don't know why. And Mr. Gembarski again.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Gambarski.
I'm bringing them in, but they're not coming in for some reason. Hold on.
You want to just take 5 minutes? We've been sitting in our chairs for 2 hours.
Sure.
Anybody have an objection? Okay,
At this time, the board will take a 5-minute recess. They'll be back at 9:15. Planning board will now reconvene, and I have Keith Gambarski in the meeting.
See, I do just want to apologize. My father lives up the street, so I just wanted to get him in. I didn't know if you were ending the meeting or not. I didn't realize you were going to break. So he was having trouble with his laptop. So I believe he was the last person that you guys had trouble communicating with before break.
okay.
So I just wanted to, I'm going to release myself, I guess, and I'm going to try to get my father, 4 Fox Hill Drive, on to communicate with you guys.
Is he signed
Mr.
in?
Jamborski?
I believe he has his hand, yeah, he hit the raise hand button and he's signed
Mr.
in,
Jim-
yes, he's watching the meeting at the moment.
He signed in as owner?
Yes, he is owner.
Okay, I'm gonna bring him in and move you out.
Okay, can I just wait? I just don't want to cross.
I mean,
Okay, Mr. Jamborski, we just need to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Mr. Gambarski?
Eileen, can you bring the other Mr. Jamborski back?
Sure.
Keith, are you able maybe just to give your father a call and put him on speaker?
Yes, I'm just gonna get him to lower the volume on his thing so we don't have echo.
Okay.
Can you just shut your volume off, please? Just mute it. All right. Okay, do you hear me?
Do you hear us?
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I just need to swear your father in.
Go ahead.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state and spell your name and give us your address.
Okay, my name is Henry Jamborski, Gembarski, 4 Fox Hill Drive.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Jimbarski.
Okay, to start, let's start with the berm or the fence, whatever it is, the property. Behind you is a 50-foot buffer, correct? Hello?
We hear you. We're just waiting for Mr. Wolfson to respond.
Oh, okay.
There's a 50-foot buffer behind the property.
Okay. See, behind my house, that 50-foot buffer, I have probably about 6, 7 trees ready to come down. They're rotted away. I could look right through the woods. Now you have that white line going through. Is that a fence?
The white line,
Okay, I'm looking, if I looked at the map, there's a white line. Is that a fence? You have a fence going up?
let me share my screen. Where do you see what you're looking in this
Okay, well,
area?
I was looking on my other one. Is there a fence going up?
There is a fence on top of the wall, but it's not the fence of the style that was discussed earlier.
Okay, you have, so in other words, do you have a berm going up?
No, there's not a berm.
And so what is it? What do you have?
There is a wall with a fence on top of the wall for safety.
Okay, and now how high is this wall and fence?
I think the fence is about a 3-foot tall fence. The wall varies in height.
Okay, now if I was to go to Sunnyside Road, there's Luke Oil. There are houses behind that. They put up a 10-foot berm with a 10-foot fence with 20-foot trees that are keep going. On one side, you can't see the house, and if you went to the house side, you can't see Luke Oil. I'm looking, like, how come we can't have that? If this township approved that, they should approve this.
Mr. Gimbarski, we stated and the experts have testified to the.
I don't care what the experts stated. I'm going to be looking at a 50-foot building. I would have stayed up north 40 years ago. I moved down here for the country. You're turning into the city. Another thing, when did West Farms Road become a commercial property? Or I'd say a highway commercial.
Mr. Cuchero, this line of questioning, this conversation, and it's not going anywhere.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well,
right.
let's hold on, Mr. Gambowski. Let our attorney try to give you some advice on what we, what is our role?
The questioning about the sufficiency of the buffer is certainly relevant and important, and something that we have discussed. The chronology of how the current zoning came to be is not within the board's jurisdiction. It's not an issue that the board's permitted to consider. It's just whether the zoning as it exists now, whether the application is compliant. But certainly the, your questions, Mr. Jimbarski, about the buffer and its adequacy are certainly within the board's jurisdiction, and questions that the applicant should be able to answer.
So how do we get past how do we get past this what appears to be this last objection that we have here, which
you don't get past it, you listen to it, the applicant responds to it, and the board can consider it in its deliberation.
And we got two different professionals. We got our professionals, we got the applicant's professionals.
Well, but now is the time just to listen. So you can discuss, which professionals you're going to accept or reject, what testimony from the public you'll accept. But I would say for now is the time to listen to the questions and the answers.
Fair enough. Thank you. All right, Mr. Gambowski, please continue.
Yes, I'd just like to know that was approved where Luke Oil, where they had the 10-foot berm, they had the fence, they got 30-foot trees or whatever, 20, and that was approved, and nothing could be approved here. And this is a massive building. The building, I believe, is just like too big for the area. It's just like they did it with the movie theater, and they did a side track and they moved that movie theater right out of here because they knew it didn't fit the area. Still there?
Yeah, we're listening.
Mr. Chairman, maybe if we spend 2 or 3 minutes and just put up the colored landscaping plan, we can lead Mr. Kowalski through this.
Well, you can certainly do what you want, Mr. Wolf said. I think you just have a difference of opinion at the end of the day. You're professionals and certain members of the public.
I agree with you, Mr. Cuchero. We just want to do whatever the board wants us to do.
I mean, I think, and Mr. Chairman, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the board's very aware now, we've been discussing it for a while, what the proposal is. We understand the applicant's position. We certainly understand the concern of the residents. But I leave it to the board.
Mr. Dombrowski, do you have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, it's like, well, what's going to be done that the trees are ready to fall? Who's going to take care of that in the 50-foot easement?
There's a proposal, sir, that the buffer as it exists will be supplemented. So I'm sure that will be taken into account when the buffer is finalized.
So, and another question, you're not going to be putting up any all-season trees?
I don't think that's true.
It's not true, and we've given extensive testimony on what it is, and we've worked with the board's experts on 4-season trees and the best buffer that can be achieved under the circumstances.
Because in reality, just like my son stated, depreciation value is going to diminish, and my taxes have just gone up.
Well, Mr. Chair, those issues are not within the board's jurisdiction. I mean, the questions about the trees, certainly.
I understand. Okay. Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Oh, like another thing, I guess it was Steve said that they're going to be 28 beds.
28 beds in the memory center. There's 130 total units.
That's correct.
Did we lose him?
I think we lost him. Okay.
I moved his son out, so I might have knocked him off. I don't know.
Well, yeah, he was coming to us through his son.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry.
Yes, he was coming to us through his son's cell phone.
Sorry, Mr. Dombrowski. If you can hear us, please.
Having issues.
Sorry.
Thanks for the moderator.
Okay, sorry about that. So there's going to be people with memory issues, correct? Hello?
As has been testified to extensively, we have a memory center. That's correct.
Okay, so people could just be walking right through the woods into my property, correct?
Totally incorrect, Mr. Gombarski.
Okay, but that's my main thing. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the building is just too massive. And I wanted to also know, when did West Farms Road become a highway commercial?
We've already discussed that, Mr. Chairman.
I know. Okay, all right, you discussed that. I guess that was a part I didn't get. But I mean, who discussed it? Anyway,
We discussed that it's not relevant under the law for our decision, that we can't consider when it became, just what the zoning is now.
Okay. But that's my main concern. I mean, the building is just, I mean, I totally go against it, but you're going to do what you want to do. And as far as I'm concerned, you've already approved this.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me just, the board, if the board were inclined to have predetermined something, I'm pretty sure it would not have exercised the liberality. Let me just tell everyone that the board's only legal obligation is to hear from members of the public once. I mean, the board has opened it up to members of the public as many times as they wanted to speak tonight. So the board has actually exceeded what its requirements are in order to take in and consider comments from the public. the board has listened to comments from the public and pushed the applicant to provide additional testimony and also to provide more specificity on certain issues such as delivery. So the thought that anything is predetermined when you've gone 2 hearings, additional information has been required, the ability of the public to participate has far exceeded the statutory requirements, I think is not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, Mr.
Okay, Bert. Now, one other question. If this does get approved, say like tonight, you approve it, does it go any further? Does it go to the council?
No.
Once it's approved, that's it?
They have to comply with conditions, and any interested party, whether it's the applicant or somebody else, can challenge it in court. But this board has the exclusive jurisdiction under the municipal land use law to grant an approval. What you should know, however, is that we have 5 members of the governing body. 2 of those members have seats on the planning board, our class 1 and our class 3. So 2 of the 5 members of the governing body are part of this board. So there is a crossover in membership.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to go back again with this berm. So it's a 3-foot berm with a 3-foot berm with a 3-foot fence.
No, there's not a berm.
There's not a berm.
And and I just checked the plan, there's a 4-foot high fence on top of where there's a wall abutting.
And how high is the wall?
It varies in height, depends on the location.
Okay, and there's no evergreen trees or 4-season trees going up?
No, there are
Mr.
4-season
Chairman,
trees going up.
There is.
We did just address this a few moments ago.
I know, I just wanted to verify it, that's all.
Where are the deer gonna go?
All right, well, do you have any new questions? Mr.
No.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. We closing the public portion? Or do we have anybody else?
There's no one with their hands up right now.
I see 2 hands up.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. One is Anatoly Jaroslawski, which
Yep.
I keep trying to bring-
Mr. Chairman, I have to say that at some point in time, the hearing has to end. We've heard now
Great.
multiple times from all these members of the public. Mr. Wolfson, do you have any objections?
I do have someone named Celeste, but her hand's not up, but she has her mic on. I don't know what she's doing.
Well, I certainly concur that the questions have been repetitive and in managing the process, we respect the board's discretion, but I agree 100% that at this point, the comments are repetitive and the points I believe have all been made.
That being said, we'll close the public portion of this meeting.
The chairman has now closed the public portion of the hearing.
All right. Does anybody on the board have questions or comments? Mr. Wolfson, would you like to summarize?
I'll be very brief. It's a permitted use. As you heard through the thorough testimony, we meet all the important parameters in terms of massing, size, and layout on the site. We have strong and enhanced buffers as blessed by the professionals through the testimony. And the applicant respectfully requests approval for the application as it has evolved to tonight, and looks forward to being a good citizen and steward within Howell.
Thank you. All right, one last call. If anybody has any questions, now's the time to speak. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Before we go to a vote, Mr. Nicastro, have you certified to vote on this?
Unfortunately, I didn't have the time.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no questions, let's
Okay,
entertain a
so
motion.
Mr. Chair, If it's a motion to deny, obviously it would just be a motion to deny. If it's a motion to approve, it would be a motion to approve preliminary and final site plan approval with ancillary variance and design waiver relief.
Brian, I had one question. I don't know if we went through it. We had mentioned something about the commercial part of the land in the front of Route 9, about whether that was going to be cleared or not, because we weren't sure what that was going to be. Did we?
I'll let the applicant confirm, but I believe they testified that they're gonna keep it wooded until that time they actually have a commercial application in front of them. Is that correct, Mr. Wolfson?
It's absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman.
And that will be in the resolution.
Thank you.
And then I'll entertain a motion if no one else has any questions.
I will make motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Dorado,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Mr. Spanville,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
Yes.
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, board members, board professionals, we'd like to thank you for your time and attention to this matter. We feel that the process was a collaborative one and led to a better plan and a better design. So thank you again. The client applicant looks forward to executing a beautiful community, one that Howell will be proud of.
Thank you, and have a good night.
You too. Be well.
Thank you.
Next case is SD-3002.
That's Mr. Cohen's case.
And I'll need to excuse myself. So can somebody just text me when Mr. Cohen is completed?
Yes.
Sure. So just for purposes of the record, our vice chair will be taking over.
Todd, good evening.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Cohen.
Good evening, new chairman and members of the board. This is an application for a minor subdivision. My client's name is Frederick Hare. The existing property is on Porter Road. There's an existing residence that the applicant's parents live in since they bought the property in 1976.
Mr. Cohen, if you could just hold on. Mr. Hare, if you could just go on to mute for a moment. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you. The applicant's proposing a minor subdivision to create two lots, one with the existing house and accessory buildings, and one for the construction of a new single-family residence that the applicant will reside in. There's two variances that we're seeking this evening for each for lot frontage variances where 200 is required and 140 feet is proposed. We have reviewed the letter from CME dated April 14th, the letter from Avakian dated July 29th, and the various professional reports from the Township Commission. I have with me Kevin Shelley, a professional engineer, as well as the applicant Frederick Hare. If we could have them sworn, we have a brief presentation by Kevin, and then we can.
Let's start with Kevin. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Kevin Shelley, S-H-E-L-L-Y.
Okay, Mr. Cohen, if you could just qualify, Mr. Shelley.
Kevin, if you could please put your qualifications, both educational and professional, on the record.
Sure. I am a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey since 2012. My license is current and in good standing. I've testified in front of various boards across the state, but I have not had the pleasure of testifying in front of this board previously.
Looks up your credentials.
Thank you.
Kevin, you're obviously familiar with the application and the review letters we've received from the board's professionals. Could you please briefly describe the application before the board this evening?
Sure. If it's all right if I share my screen,
Yes.
I will bring up the subdivision plan that was submitted as part of the application.
That's marked as A4.
A4. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The subject property is located at 94 Porter Road. It is located in the agricultural rural estate, the ARE2 zoning district. The 5.16 acre property is 280 foot wide by about 800 foot deep. Residential uses surround the property on all the sides, with the property directly to the west being farm qualified. The property contains a single-family dwelling with a long gravel driveway, a shed, a storage container, while the remainder of the property is wooded and undeveloped. The Haystack Brook meanders through the rear of the property, as you can see in the bottom of the screen here. And the applicant's family has owned the property since 1976. The applicant seeking a minor subdivision approval to split the property down the middle, creating two 140-foot wide lots. The existing single-family home and existing improvements will remain on lot 7.01, which totals 2.505 acres. And the proposed lot 7.02 will be 2.66 acres located on the left of the screen. The applicant's proposing to construct a single-family home for himself on lot 7.02, while his parents will continue to reside in the existing home on lot 7.01. The AR2 bulk standards require a minimum lot area of 2 acres, and both of the proposed lots meet this requirement. However, variance is needed for each property, as the proposed 140-foot lot width do not meet the 200-foot lot width requirement. A lot width of less than 200 feet is not uncommon in this area. The two lots directly adjacent to the subject property to the east, lots 5 and 6, are also both 140 feet. Across the street and just to the west of the property, lots 10.01, 10.02, 11.01, and 11.02 are all 140-foot wide lots as well.
Hey, Kevin, I don't mean to interrupt you. If you're not speaking, can you put yourself on mute? Because there's some bad feedback coming through. So, Kevin, your floor is yours.
Thank you.
Nick, do you want me to just nip this? Like, this is a very easy subdivision application. Do you want me to just jump in and like take over?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like at the end of the day, it's a minor subdivision that he's asking for. The lot width requirement is 120, 200 feet. He's at 140 feet. I agree with him. There are multiple lots in the area that are the same width. He has the requisite area. And so at the end of the day, I take no exception to the request for the relief. And, you know, there are minor things that need to be dealt with, like, you know, the sidewalk, which I would like to see, not for nothing, but other than that, like, there's really, I get it, there's no relief, like there's no additional information that we need. It's a 2-lot subdivision, it's not a big issue, and yes, the width is not what we need, but the area is, and that's to me more important. So I would put it back to you, Mr. Chair, but I don't really think we need to go into like major depth into the testimony on the width. So that's up to you.
No, I agree, Jen. Thanks very much. I guess, Mr. Cohen, are sidewalks proposed in this area? And if not, are you amenable to putting them in?
So there are no sidewalks anywhere along all of Porter Road. We are asking for the waiver from that requirement. If you look at the frontage of the property, the trees out in front go pretty much up to the edge of pavement line. And there is no curbing on Porter Road either. So in our opinion, to get a sidewalk safely far enough away from the edge of pavement, there is going to be some tree removal. Again, it's our position that we would ask for the waiver. If the board feels strongly otherwise, then we'll agree to comply. But that is our opinion. That's why we're asking for the waiver.
I'm good with the waiver, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Kevin.
And I think the only other item that in our meeting with the board's professionals that they just wanted us to put on the record to testify to was the 300-foot special resource protection area that's measured from the top of the bank from the stream in the back. For the new lot 7.02 on the left, we'll agree to comply with that, create a 300-foot buffer. I think we discussed it and it was requested that we ask for a partial waiver from this requirement for the existing lot, since there are the existing house, the driveway, there is tree clearing within that 300 feet. We would agree to create a restriction at the current clearing limit so that nothing further can be cleared or disturbed in that area, but we physically don't have a 300-foot buffer to grant.
I agree, Mr. Chair. It's the waiver. They do need that for the new lot, and I appreciate what they have committed to. And I agree that the limit of disturbance on the existing lot extends into that area. So I have no issue with them requesting the waiver with respect to the existing disturbance, as long as there's no additional disturbance in that area. Yes.
We have no issue with that.
The applicant will agree to that.
Yeah.
Got it.
And besides that, we take no exceptions to any of the other comments or items that were requested in the engineering and planning letters. I think just adding a couple additional information and we'll agree to comply with all those requirements.
Great. Is that it for your testimony?
That's all I got.
Okay. Todd, do you have anybody else or is that it?
Sorry, I got lost. No, that completes our testimony.
All right. Any of the board members have any questions? Board professionals, anything?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
All right, seeing none. Eileen, I think it'll be a quick one, but we do have to open to the public.
This time, the chairman's open the hearing up for members of the public. If you have questions or comments on this application, please use the raise your hand feature. We'll bring you in one at a time. You will need audio and video. You will be required to be sworn in and give your name and address. Anyone calling in, use *9 to raise or lower your hand, *6 to mute or unmute yourself.
You have one. Mr. Card.
We have David Card coming in.
Mr. Card, could you unmute yourself and put your camera on, please? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the
there.
testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
David Card, C-A-R-D, 78 Porter Road.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
On the house right to the west, where the engineer said it was farm qualified. My first question is, why isn't there the 50-foot farm buffer implemented on the drawing and not just the 30-foot?
So I can answer that quickly for you. He submitted plans, the zoning standards. The zoning standard is a 30-foot side yard setback. It was noted in the farm advisor's review letter that there is a 50-foot buffer, which we'll agree to comply with and provide the appropriate easement documentation for that. So there will be a 50-foot buffer provided.
Okay, that was simple enough.
How about the farm deed restriction
Well,
language?
Yeah, you'll have the language too, like the the noise and all that stuff with the buffer, the ordinance with that, the language.
Yes, any applicable language that's required will be included. Yep.
Anything else, Mr. Card? Anything else? You keep going on mute and unmute. No? All right, thank you very much. Eileen, I don't see anybody else. So we could close the public portion.
At this time, the chairman has closed the public portion of the hearing.
Todd, any closing remarks?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'll rely on the testimony presented by Mr. Shelley and the accommodations we've made to the agreements in what's in the professional code.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will entertain a motion. I think, Paul, you're on mute if you were trying to talk.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve.
And I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Mr. Dorado.
Thank you. Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Dorado,
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro. Rob, sorry, you're muted.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Spanville,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
Yes.
and Chairman Husser.
Yes.
Motion carries. Application's approved.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Good night. Eileen, are you texting Brian?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, quick question. It's Joe Cristiano.
Yes.
What time is this going on till tonight? I know there's another couple apps on.
I think there's just one more application. That would be up to the chairman. So when he gets back, we can, but we do have an executive session that we need also. So I was going to discuss that with the chairman as well.
Right.
Oh, Brian?
I don't know if he's back.
Not back
He's
yet. Ron.
back. He just looks like he needs to.
Sorry.
Okay, Mr. Chair, just before we get into the next application, looking at the time, we do have the executive tonight where we need to discuss litigation. I know the application for 90 Industrial is not like the hair application, a little more complex. So I don't know if you want to.
Mr. Pape, want to take 10 minutes to get it started?
I think we need to bring Ken in.
Hold on.
We need to let him make the call.
Mr. Mayan, good evening. Mr. Chair, board members, all, thank you. This is a warehouse in an industrial park. It's the industrial park that was approved by this board about a year and a half ago. And although I think that we have a very organized presentation, 10 minutes would be a good introduction, but not adequate to make the entire presentation. I'd be pleased to take just those 10 minutes if that's what's being offered and to introduce it to you. May I ask, very important would be, when would we be carried to, so I could check with all of our professionals to make sure that we're able to come back?
Well, Mr. Pape, you have something on our next meeting, August 18th.
I'm on vacation. You can do it that day.
That's Friza. You also have Victory Road on September 1st. And then I have,
September 1st, I would not suggest putting anything else on. That date may become,
yeah, I
more
also
full.
have September 15th.
I would ask that you put this on August 18th. If we are given 10 minutes this evening, I believe that we'd be able to complete the presentation to the board in about 35 to 40 minutes at the second hearing.
Okay.
Then I'll, Mr. Chair, board members, board professionals, and public that's gathered, good evening. Kenneth Pape on behalf of your applicant, 90 Industrial Court LLC. This is a request for preliminary and final major site plan approval for a warehouse building of approximately 70,000 square feet. It is in the middle, almost the hole in the donut of an industrial park that was approved a year and a half ago called the Vanderveer Industrial Park. If I may, just for, if we could confirm, we were carried to this evening and that there was no further requirement of renotice or republication and jurisdiction has been established.
Correct.
Yes, thank you. Very brief opening statement to you is that this is the owner of the adjacent property has a very successful janitor product distribution business. This is an opportunity for that gentleman and his partners to build a new warehouse adjacent to the one that he has. It is proposed to be a 1 or 2 tenant building. The goal is to use it entirely by the applicant owner, but we would like to have an insurance policy and have the ability to have a second tenant if possible. One of the things that I wanted to place on the record at the very beginning is that the property was a farm for a number of years. The farming activity was abandoned a year and a half ago. And as recently as this past week, our clients have entered into a stipulation of rollback tax settlement and have officially abandoned all farming use of the property. The reason I bring that to your attention is there are certain comments in Ms. Beam's report that note that farm activity requires buffers, and I think all of those are now going to go away. If we could just have Mr. Strong sworn briefly, I'll ask Mr. Strong to just make an opening statement, mindful that we've got about 6 minutes left, and then we'll see you on the 18th. Mr. Strong.
Testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Peter, you have to open your mic.
And your video. Oh, there
Got it. There we go. Mr. Strong, we have your credentials and your.
Mr. Pape, before you continue, can you clarify, are you saying that the farm activities that are taking place on the property now are actually farm activities that the applicant that owns the building presently and is doing this expansion is also the farmer of that land?
No, Mr. Chair, the farming activity was abandoned a year and a half ago. My
Okay.
clients, they purchased it. We gave notice to the town that farmland use was abandoned, and we just went through the whole process. There's a complaint being filed and entering a stipulation of settlement.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Mr. Strong, your credentials and education, if we could do that swiftly.
Yes, Peter Strong, S-T-R-O-N-G. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey since 1975. I have a BS in civil engineering from what is now New Jersey Institute of Technology. And I've been practicing civil engineering and land development in the central New Jersey area for the last 50 years. Testified before this board on many occasions over that time period. And have testified in front of many other boards as well.
We'll accept your credentials.
Thank you. Mr. Strong, I think that probably the most effective thing that we could do is introduce to the board 3 exhibits. If we could do that in just a couple of minutes, if you could do the regional aerial photograph first. And I.
Okay. You share. Oop. Nope. So this is an aerial map of the site. Obviously, the part that says site is the area that's going to be developed as a new site plan. And you can see the farming activity that was occurring on the property previously. Adjacent to that and also outlined in yellow is what's known as Lot 2, which is the existing Janico building. That building is owned by the same people who own the current site for proposed lot 4. And the 2 lots will be developed, the one lot will be developed in conjunction with the existing uses on the existing lot 2.
If we could go to the next aerial photograph and get a little bit closer to the site.
Okay, can you see that?
We can. And
Okay.
if you, so
this is another aerial, but it shows the existing lot and its development and the proposed development on lot 4, which consists of a 70,000 square foot building, 63,000 roughly square feet of warehouse, and 2 office elements at either end, which are shown in the dashed yellow lines, of about 3,500 square feet apiece, total of 70,000 square feet, with 36 parking spaces, 15 in the small lot in the front, near the front office area, 21 in the back near the other office area, and then 13 loading docks in between.
And Mr. Strong, if you would bring up your colored site plan, please. And I'm not going to ask that you testify here. I'm going to use the last couple of minutes in the following manner. This is the middle of the industrial park. We have worked, the reason that we were on your agenda 3 times before appearing and beginning this public hearing is that each time that we received a staff report, we met with your staff and modified this plan substantially. I think that it is quite clear that this plan is very well landscaped, that the circulation is very, very efficient and smooth. And I can tell you that we worked with your professionals to get all of the encroachments, all the violations out of the buffer. A lot of work went into that. You know that Mr. Strong and I take this responsibility seriously. We have been to the fire marshal on at least 2 occasions. Back in the winter, we were at the Environmental Commission, and Ms. Spiro and I actually walked the entire site to make certain that we had a full understanding of it. I tell you all of that on purpose. Your applicant went to great pains to make certain that what we're about to present to you is a project that is worthy of being approved. I think that is the best use of the 10 minutes that we could, Mr. Chair, and we'll come, with your permission, we'll return on the 18th, go through the details of this plan and go through your staff's reports.
That is
Is that an
fantastic.
acceptable procedure?
That sounds good to me, but let me pass it off to the vice chair because he will be the chairman at that time. I'll be on vacation.
I'm actually on vacation too. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, it's fine. I guess Ron too. This is a question. We requested at the commission, at the Environmental Commission, the phase 1 report and any subsequent documents, and I don't remember seeing them. Is that something that you could get over to Eileen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, I think there was a phase 1 that was done previously before the subdivision was approved. There hasn't been a new one since the
So whatever the phase 1 is, get it over.
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure. Very fine. Thank you.
Okay,
for
then, Mr. Chair,
accommodating us.
I'll just make the announcement.
Surely.
Okay, the application of 90 Industrial Court LLC, case number SP 1098, be carried to the board's August 18th, 2022 meeting. It will be a virtual meeting beginning at 7 o'clock. Instructions on how to access the meeting will be available on the town's website at least 10 days prior, or you can call Eileen at the planning office. All documents are also on file and also accessible on the township website to be inspected by members of the public. There'll be no further notice to property owners.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Have a good night, Mr. Pape.
Good night.
I believe we have to go into executive session.
We do. Eileen, if you have the resolution, but in this instance, we will be reconvening in public.
And I have to recuse myself from this again.
Okay.
Have a good night, everybody.
And
Good night, Nick.
Night, Nick. Okay, for everybody, I sent you an email today with the credentials for the executive session. When
Yep.
we're done with that, unfortunately, you have to log back into this session.
Okay,
We have to go out and come back in. First, I'll read
okay.
the resolution and then we need a motion to go into exec. Executive session resolution, whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes requires that the public shall not be excluded from any meetings of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. And whereas the Planning Board of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12, namely litigation.
And
Now,
with
therefore-
regard to that, Eileen, the specific litigation is AAFFHW v. Howell Township Planning Board.
Thank you. Now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting and that the Planning Board will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session and the time and circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time. And I just need a motion on the reso to go into executive.
So moved, Diane.
And
Second,
thank you. Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Dorado,
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman. Is Rob still on?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Spanville,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
yes.
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Okay, I will see you in the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have everyone back?
Do you want me to take attendance?
Yes, yes, please.
Mr. Bavai. Hold on, we got Jen in the audience. 1 second. Mr. Bavai was missing from executive. Mr. Cristiano,
Present.
Mr. Dorado,
You're muted, Paul.
Here.
thank you.
Tired, but I'm here.
Sorry.
How
Mr.
did that save
Husser
Kim?
was excused. Mr. Husser was excused or recused himself. I'm sorry. Mr. Nacastro,
Here.
Mr. Seaman,
Oh, it's Mr. Seaman.
Mr. Spanville,
Here.
Ms. Talente,
Here,
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Hold on here.
You have a quorum.
Hold on.
I'm sorry?
It's like we're getting, it's like Rob is patiently waiting.
I don't have Rob on here. Is he waiting in the other meeting?
Yeah. Is it okay if I respond to him, Ron, or should Eileen?
You can respond to him. Just do it, one-on-one and just tell him to come into this room.
Can I ask what we're waiting for?
Waiting for Rob to join.
He hasn't joined yet.
Do we still have a quorum?
Yes, you do.
Ron, what's the procedure?
It's up to you, Mr. Chair. We can certainly move forward, or if you wanted to wait, you could wait. Either is acceptable.
We'll give him another minute.
Rob said he's trying to get into the other meeting. I guess he's having trouble.
Trying to get into the other meeting?
To this one.
Let me just call him. Went to voicemail.
Yeah, I would say we just move forward, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Sounds good.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, we, as the resolution had stated, we went into executive session to discuss the case of AAFF HW v. Township of Howell Planning Board. As the board members remember, this was an application that for a warehouse near Howell Road, near the pool facility. It was a 3-3 vote, actually, 3 in favor of approval, 3 for denial, which resulted in the denial of the application. An action was subsequently filed in Superior Court, which is pending. The parties have had discussions regarding settlement. The applicant has proposed to provide increased buffering between its site and the neighboring residential site or properties, which was not something that had been proposed during the initial application. Also significantly, they have agreed on the building where truck parking and bays were going to be in the rear, closer to the residential, to move that to the front of the building, so it would be farther away from the residential. So several of the concerns that the board had with regard to the neighbors are being addressed. So there is a proposed settlement agreement which has been distributed. I want to make clear what the settlement agreement means. There's a case called Whispering Woods. And basically what Whispering Woods says is that you can't just agree outside of the public process with a developer that you're going to change an application that went through a public hearing process. What you can do is agree that you're going to hold another public hearing, and you can agree on the nature of the application that's going to be considered. So that's what this board is doing tonight if it votes to approve the settlement, is agreeing to hold a public hearing, which would be September 1st. And again, it's a public hearing, so all the neighbors would have another opportunity. There'd be another notice that goes out to all neighbors within 200 feet, as well as being published in the newspaper. You're not agreeing that you're going to approve the application, but we're agreeing that this modified application is going to have a public hearing. If the application is approved, then the case will be dismissed and go away. If the application is not approved, then the litigation would continue. But I just want to be clear that there's not an agreement that there is an outright approval. Certainly, we have agreed as to the nature of the application that's going to be presented, but very importantly, public has another right to come and to place arguments in the record. So that's what we would be doing if this application or if this matter were voted upon for settlement tonight. I just want to also state that if we went through the litigation process in the event that the township didn't prevail, it would be that the application that was presented, not this modified application with the increased buffer and the relocated loading area, would be constructed. So with that, I leave it to the board as to whether it wants to vote to execute the settlement agreement to have a public hearing on the modified application.
Okay. We just need a motion.
Yes,
We just need a motion to move forward with the
to approve the settlement.
I make the motion to approve the settlement.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bavai is absent. Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Dorado,
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro,
Yes.
Mr. Spanville,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
yes.
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I thank everybody. That's
Thank
all I
you.
have for tonight. We can take a motion to adjourn now.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
Night.